hit subscribe. Subscribe to my guy, Uncle D. Tell him Big Bass sent you.
Spurling. I'm an attorney here in Houston, Texas, an advocate for black men, largely because I am a black man. I'm a black father, I have black sons. Hey man, I do what I do.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the broadcast. Thank you guys so much. Before we get started good, I want y'all to help me do a microphone check. If it sounds like I'm far away from the microphone, if there's an echo, let me know. Let me know if it sounds like I'm in a big hall and there's an echo. Let me know. Let me know how the sound is before we get going good. This is a very important broadcast. How does it sound? How is it sound? How does it sound now? Let me know how it sounds. Okay. I want to make sure. Yes, what? How's it sound? Does it sound good? Is the sound good? Let me know if the sound is good. This is what I want to know. Okay. All right. Let me answer this question for me. Is it better? This is the sound better now? Does it sound better now? How does it sound now? Is it good? Somebody says good. Is it better now? Is it better now? Or is it better now? Is it sound better now? Which one was better? It was bad at first? Okay. Is this better? Is the sound better now? Let me know. Is it better now? Let me know how it sounds now. Now it's better. If it's better now, hit the number 1 button. If the sound is better now, hit the number 1 button. All right, cool. Thank you so much. I had a little echo in my most previous video. I didn't really like that. But anyway, welcome to the broadcast, you guys. My name is Dennis Spurling. Today, I want to talk about something that exposes the truth about reparations in America. Somebody type reparations in the chat room. This is something that has been tackled for generations, largely pushed by a lot of, I guess, more activist type people. I'm really the only attorney that I know that's really focused on this, at least one that would be qualified to discuss it, as this would fall into the realm of complex civil litigation. Now, again, when I talk about reparations in America, this is not a slogan or some talking points, and it's not political theater, and I'm not going to lie to you at all. Okay, so if you think that this is going to be a session where I'm going to promise you some pie in the sky, you're going to be disappointed. Okay, I'm talking about actual legal and political realities of what happens when Black Americans seek reparative justice from the United States government. Okay, now recently, Donald Trump's administration, Department of Justice, moved to intervene in a lawsuit challenging Evanston's, Illinois, reparation program for Black residents. And this happened on June 16th, 2026. Now, Evanston's program mattered because it wasn't some symbolic resolution or some empty political speech. Evanston was described as the first city in America to take a real step towards reparations for Black residents. And when I say Black residents, I'm talking about foundational Black Americans. Somebody type delineation in the chat room, okay? Now, under this program, eligible Black residents or their descendants could receive up to $25,000 in housing-related grants. And to qualify, All they had to do was show that their ancestors lived in Evanston between 1919 and 1969, or they suffered housing discrimination tied to city policies. In other words, this wasn't random. This definitely wasn't charity. This wasn't even a giveaway. This was a local government attempting to address a specific history of targeted discrimination against Black people and their families for generations, which would have interfered with generational wealth. That was the whole point of that. But the Trump Justice Department's position was that this program was racially discriminatory. And the truth is, it is. It definitely is. And it's probably a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. And that's just the truth. Okay. Their argument was that Evanston was given cash payments and housing assistance to specifically to Black Americans and their descendants while excluding similarly situated people of other races. And that's the legal theory. And the federal government is now treating a Black repatriation program as unlawful discrimination. This was extremely targeted, and it was a tiny, minute amount. Okay. And see, here's the part people need to understand, and I want you all to pay very close attention. This is what reparations will look like in America, even if a law is passed on the federal level. Even if a city passes a reparations program, a little tiny city, not Chicago, Evanston, okay? It won't simply go into effect without a legal fight. It will be challenged. It will be attacked. It will be dragged into court. It'll face interference from other branches of government. It'll face federal government interference. It'll face hundreds of millions of dollars in litigation costs and attorney's fees. It's going to have to deal with injunctions, appeals, delays, years of litigation, obstruction before $1 ever reaches people it's supposedly designed to help. It's hard enough to get custody of a child. Can you imagine how difficult it is to get custody of that check? Somebody type cut the check in the chat room. Okay. Have you ever tried to change custody? That could take years. Have you ever tried to get yourself off child support? Years. Somebody type years in litigation. Imagine trying to get $1 trillion out the American government. Imagine all the people that are going to step up and say, no, we're not going to give those Blacks anything. We're just going to fund it just so they can't have it. The ones who are litigants now, they'll be dead before $1 passes to their hands. So again, when people say just pass a reparations bill, they need to understand that passing the law isn't the end of the fight. It's the beginning, okay? Because even if Congress passed a federal reparations bill tomorrow, that law still wouldn't exist in a vacuum. It'd have to be implemented by the executive branch. It'd have to go through federal agencies. It's going to be reviewed. It's going to be interpreted. It's going to be enforced. And it's going to be resisted by the Department of Justice and pretty much every state attorney general, even the ones in the liberal states. Look at what Gavin Newsom did to the reparations bill in California. He vetoed it. And that's the most liberal state in America. It will be any reparations law that goes in effect to give foundational Black Americans reparations is going to be challenged. It's dead in the water. States are going to sue. The federal government is going to sue. Advocacy groups are going to sue. Opponents will claim reverse discrimination. They'd argue equal protection. They'd seek injunctions. They'll freeze the program before it ever reached any Black Americans. And then what? And then we'd be looking at decades of litigation before anything meaningful happened. And that's why asking the federal government for reparations is going to fail if Black Americans think the request alone is enough. Evanston is a small, little, tiny town. This is a tiny example of what the larger fight would look like. This wasn't even a national program. This wasn't even Congress writing checks to Black Americans. This is a little $25,000 check for housing. This is one city trying to address a very specific local history of housing discrimination. And even that was enough to trigger a federal response. And that needs to tell you everything you need to hear. Now you have the mayor of Evanston, Daniel Biss, said the city stands behind the program. It believes it's constitutional and it intends to fight it in court. We don't know for how long. Maybe until he is no longer the mayor. My whole point is this: they still have to defend that in court, and it's going to cost money. They're going to spend millions of dollars. Think about this: you're going to spend millions of dollars to give residents $25,000. Think about that. Think about that. Imagine the time and energy and legal. They're literally going to spend more money litigating this case than to simply pay the $25,000 to the residents. So we need to be clear about something. Regarding that bill, Donald Trump didn't formally veto a federal black reparations bill. That's not what happened. There was no federal reparations bill sitting on Trump's desk that he rejected with a veto pen. But what did happen is extremely important. His Justice Department moved to help protect and undermine and potentially invalidate a local black reparations program that wouldn't even affect anybody outside that city. I want you to think about that. And that brings us to H.R. 40. And this is the main federal reparations bill. Its official name is the Commission to Study and Develop Reparations Proposals for African Americans Act. And in the current Congress, it was introduced by Representative Ayanna Pressley on January 3rd, 2025, and referred to the House Judiciary Committee. Now, let me tell you something. They've been reintroducing this bill for years. And typically what they'll do is, and this is my observation, you can be mad if you want to, but I find that if a black congressional seat holder is wavering or they want some national attention, they'll reintroduce this commission to study, develop reparations proposals so they can shore up their black support. That's typically what I've noticed. I don't even think they're sincere. And here's what people need to understand about HR 40. It's not talking about cutting a check. It doesn't automatically give Black Americans reparation. It creates a commission to study. Okay? It's just to study slavery, right? As if they don't have an African American studies department right over there at Howard University, which is about 20 minutes from the White House. They can't go over there and get their studies, right? That's it. It's a study. And then after that, the commission will make recommendations. That's it. So when people start screaming against reparations, reparations, bro, HR 40, but that's not even a fight. We're not even fighting about getting a check. It's not like they say, hey, all you black people line up and get your check. That's not what this is. Okay? They're fighting against a study. They're fighting against the investigation. They're fighting against the formal record. They're fighting against the government even admitting that they may be something to repair. And that tells you everything. And HR 40 hadn't even passed Congress. They've been reintroducing this for years. It hadn't gone to Trump's desk or any other president's desk, but politically and legally, the message is still loud and clear. Black reparations remain stalled, resisted, delayed, and attacked. Now, see, here's where the contrast comes very powerful. On April 13th, 2026, Trump signed the Holocaust Expropriated Art Recovery Act of 2025 into law. All right, now, this is something, the law extends and expands legal remedies for Holocaust survivors and heirs to pursue artwork and cultural property stolen by Nazis. Now, World War II happened in Europe, and this is an American law that grants descendants of people who were victimized by Jewish people who were victimized by the Nazi the Jewish Holocaust, to recover artwork. Because what the Nazis did, they didn't just come in and wage war. They came in and stole stuff. They stole all these Jewish people's artwork and cultural property and so on and so forth. So here we are almost 80 years later, and they're allowed to recover their property, recovering their property that was taken from them as a result of World War II. Something that America really didn't have anything to do with. I mean, these are the Nazis who did. But the bottom line is we need to be clear about something, okay? And let me say this. I'm not against Holocaust survivors or their families recovering what was stolen from them. Not at all. I mean, they should do that. That's not the point. The point is that the United States government clearly knows how to create legal pathways for historical restitution when it wants to. It knows how to recognize historical harm when it wants to. It knows how to extend deadlines when it wants to. Somebody type statute of limitations. It knows how to create special legal remedies when it wants to. It knows how to help descendants recover stolen property. And it knows how to treat historical injustice as something that still matters when it wants to. And the question is simple. Why isn't the same legal creativity, seriousness, and institutional protection extended to Black American descendants of slavery? When the harm involves other groups, the federal government knows how to act. And see, that's not the only one. In 1988, Congress passed and President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act, and it gave surviving Japanese Americans $20,000 each and a formal apology for being forced into internment camps during World War II. And in 1946, Congress created the Indian Claims Commission to hear Native American tribal claims into stolen land and broken treaties and unfair treatment by federal government. And that commission ultimately awarded them then $800 million to the tribes. And that was a lot of money in the 1980s, okay? Even though it didn't restore the land, they still got almost $1 billion. In 1971, Congress passed the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, which extinguished Alaska Native Aboriginal land claims, but it created Native corporations that provided land and monetary compensation as part of the settlement. And many of you all were alive during this after 9/11 or after September 11, 2001, Congress created the September 11th Victim Compensation Fund to compensate victims, families, and later first responders and survivors who suffered as a result of 9/11 related illnesses. So my point isn't that the government doesn't know how to create remedies for historical injury. They get real creative when they want to. Somebody type when they want to in the chat room. The government knows how to create commission. It knows how to identify claimants. It knows how to compensate descendants, and it knows how to extend deadlines. It knows how to reopen old claims, and it knows how to set up funds and agencies and procedures and legal pathways when it wants to, or should I say, when the political will exists. But when it comes to Black American descendants of slavery, when we ask for reparations for stolen labor, stolen land, our stolen bodies, destroyed families, redline neighborhoods, blocked wealth, government hack, racial harm, suddenly the same government becomes confused and says, oh no, we need to be colorblind, okay? And that's the contradiction. And the issue isn't whether the government knows how to repair historical injustice. The issue is whether the people in power are even willing to use that same legal machinery when victims of Black American descendants of slavery. And the truth is they're not. Can we just accept that truth? They're not. Okay? Because see, the problem isn't ability. We are the United States government. We can do pretty much whatever we want to here in the United States. The problem the problem is political will. That's it. Okay? What I'm saying, let me say this otherwise. The problem is the government doesn't want to do it, and you can't make them. Is that clear? So when we talk about reparations, it's not going to happen. And that is my legal opinion. Okay? That is my earnest, most honest legal opinion. You're going to get wrapped up in so much, or at least not that route. The route you're trying to take is not going to work. And that's the truth that you have to deal with. And see, here's what you need to understand. The truth is, foundational Black Americans will not ever get reparations from the American government. And the route that route to reparations has failed, and it'll continue to fail because Black Americans don't have the leverage to force the payment, and we haven't created an incentive strong enough to make other groups get behind it. And that's the cold-hearted truth right there. That's the ice cold truth. That's the political reality. Why would the average American voter support raising taxes, increasing federal spending, or redirecting American tax dollars to one group of American citizens for reparations? Why would they do that? What's the incentive for them to do that? Go ask your Hispanic friends, or your white friends, or your Arab friends, or your Caribbean friends. What incentive do they have to raise their tax dollars? Or how can you make them do it? Tell me, how are you gonna make these people do it? Huh? I'm talking, somebody type FBA and all my foundational Black Americans in it. Let's have an honest conversation, because I'm going to speak to you honestly. What's in it for them? What benefit do they receive by sending Black Americans a check totaling $1 trillion? What pressure are they under to do that? I want you to just think about that. We got busted highways and busted roads, and education is underfunded. The healthcare is shot to crap. We got a bunch of old people running around. We got a drug epidemic. What's their incentive? What do they lose if they say no? And until Black Americans answer those questions, federal reparations is dead in the water. Look, I know people don't like to hear that, but apparently lately I'm the one. I'm gonna just give you the bad news. I'm that guy, right? I'm that lawyer. Somebody type mean lawyer in the chat room. I guess that's me, right? I know it makes you mad to hear that. Somebody type sellout in the chat room. I'm a boule, I'm a sellout. I'm just telling you the truth. If you don't believe me, go ask some white people how they feel about giving you reparations. Ask them if they're willing to raise their taxes to give you reparations. I'm just saying. Most of them are going to say something like, our ancestors didn't even get here to 1915. We didn't have anything to do with it, and you weren't in slavery. That's what they're going to say. I mean, think about it. These people barely wanted us to drink at their water fountains. They fought us over school buses and neighborhoods and voting rights and contracts and housing and basic human dignity. So what makes anybody think they're just going to turn around and hand Black Americans $1 trillion because we made a moral argument? Think about that. Yeah, slavery was bad. We know it was horrible. But that's a moral argument. I want you to think about that using your common sense. The same government that had to be forced to recognize us as full citizens is just suddenly going to write a historic check because we gave a powerful speech. America doesn't have $1 trillion it's willing to give to Black people. And even if it had the money sitting there, right, just sitting over there on the dresser somewhere, yeah, let's just get the Blacks, just line them up outside. We'll give. Even if they had the money sitting there, it wouldn't give it to us without pressure or leverage or some sort of benefit to the people controlling the money, right? And that's why any serious reparation strategy has to satisfy two basic requirements. First, there has to be an ample source of income, large enough to fund the remedy. And second, there has to be leverage or an incentive. Either we hold something over the person or institution or government or entity when we want money from, or we present them with an option where they benefit too. And without money, leverage, or incentive, reparation, it isn't a plan. It's begging dressed up as politics. Now, that being the case, I have the answer. Somebody type the answer in the chat room. I have the answer. Shout out to everybody. I know you all are going to learn something. Shout out to everybody in the chat room. I'm absolutely certain that you all are going to learn something. You don't owe me anything. But if you learn something, I should earn something. That's all I say. But I absolutely must ask that you subscribe to the channel. Now, are you ready for the answer? Are you ready? Because see, you all have been fighting me for this for about 6 years now. Are you ready now? Are you ready for the answer? See, we have a lot of new subscribers, and they were like, well, what's going on? We thought you was a right-wing conservative. Absolutely not. But nor am I liberal. I'm pragmatic. I solve problems and I speak the truth. And because I speak the truth, it's easier for me to solve problems. I don't live in a delusional world. Are you all ready for the answer? Are you ready for the truth? You ready to hear it? I'll give you the answer. But see, Black Americans haven't wanted to hear it. See, these federal reparations keeps failing because we don't have the leverage to make the federal government pay us, and we never will. But there's another path, and that path creates the incentives necessary to bring in the federal government as a partner, major corporations, major law firms, construction companies, US-based oil companies, energy companies, even parts of the American public will be happy to go along with it. In other words, we let them fight our fight because they benefit from the outcome too. See, the problem is that many Black Americans, you'll find this answer distasteful because it requires us to seek reparations from the other guilty party. Somebody type other. Somebody type other guilty party. It requires us to seek reparations from the successor states in Africa whose predecessor kingdoms and empires and merchants and ruling classes participated in the capture, sale, transport, and export of our ancestors. And see, that history isn't imaginary. The transatlantic slave trade lasted for centuries. Historical data places the trade from the mid-1500s to 1860 with approximately 12.2 million Black bodies loaded onto Atlantic slave ships and about 11 million surviving the Middle Passage into America, or the Americas. And before this, the first Africans arrived, or before the first Africans arrived in British North America in 1619, more than 500,000 Africans had already been transported to Brazil. And by the end of the trade, more than 4 million had been taken there. The ships were European and American, and the plantation system was European and American. But the supply chain began inside Africa. And in many regions, captains were moved through the interior trading networks, sometimes up to 500 miles before reaching the coastal markets and the forts and the ports along what was called the Gold Coast, which supplied about 10% of all of the transatlantic captives. People could be moved from as far north as Sahel, I believe that's where they spell it, before reaching the coast. In Senegambia, more than 750,000 captives were moved through overland and river routes, and in Central Africa, captives shipped from Launda, Cabinda, Loango, and the Congo River often came from deep interior networks. So when I say the other guilty party, somebody type the other guilty party. When I say the other guilty party, I'm not talking about fantasy. I'm talking about actual historical participation. The Oyo Empire and what is now Nigeria relied heavily on slave sales to Europeans by the late 1700s. And after its collapse in the early 1800s, especially between 1817 and 1836, internal wars and regional conflict helped feed tens of thousands of captives in the Atlantic slave trade. The Dahomies in what's called Benin. This is the little armpit of Africa over there. The two little states, Dahomey and Benin. That was West Africa's major slave trading power, especially in the 1700s and the 1800s. Selling war captives. Somebody type war captives in the chat room. Raiding neighbors' peoples for export. In 1851 and 1852, the British even blockaded Dahomey's ports to force the king, and I believe his name is spelled or pronounced Gizo, to agree to end the slave trade. So you had the English trying to stop slavery. The British were trying to stop slavery. And the African kings persisted. But the large scale, I mean, think about it. White people tried to stop slavery and the black Africans wanted to keep selling slaves. They had been doing it so long. Matter of fact, the African slave trade was preceded by the Arab slave trade, which it went on for 1,000 years before the English before the Europeans even got involved. You understand? The Asante Empire, in what's now known as Ghana, also operated inside a regional world where slavery, war captives, and interior trade and coastal exchange were connected to the Atlantic slave. So these Africans were all involved in this. Look, I'm not trying to look, you know, this doesn't erase European guilt. I want you all, somebody type white guilt in the chat room. Come on, type white guilt. We need that white guilt. Keep that white guilt going, okay? It doesn't erase American guilt. We need that too, okay? But it does destroy the fantasy that the only guilty parties were Europeans and Americans, and all of them were outside Africa. Somebody type the other guilty party in the chat room. I mean, can we keep it? You all come here because you want the truth. I'm going to give you the truth. Okay? Now, for all the people who are about to, I know what you're going to say. For all the people who say those old kingdoms don't exist anymore, how do you sue Africa? First of all, we're not suing all 54 states in Africa. That's not what we're doing, okay? But I do want you to understand something. It's a principle of law. It's called successor-state responsibility. It's recognized. It's a recognized topic in international law, even though applying it to slavery would be fiercely contested and aggressively litigated and extremely difficult. The International Law Commission has studied state succession in relation to responsibility for international wrongful acts, including questions about reparations for injury and connected to predecessor states. The point isn't that the case would be easy. The point is that the legal theory exists. And it's the same kind of theory African leaders have already used when they went to ask when they demand apologies and reparations from Europe. On March 25th, 2026, do you guys remember at the United Nations Assembly, they adopted a Ghanaian-led resolution recognizing transatlantic slave trade in enslaved Africans and racialized chattel slavery as the gravest crime against humanity, and call for reparations. Think about that. The Ghanaians who participated heavily in the slave trade said, yeah, we want some reparations money. And it passed. The vote passed with 123 countries favored, while the United States, Israel, and one other country opposed it. And 52 countries, including the European Union and Britain, abstained. Then on June 19, 2026, I'm just giving to you the facts. I'm giving it to you. Okay? On June 19, 2026, African and Caribbean nations meeting in Accra, Ghana, backed a 19-point reparations plan demanding formal apologies, debt relief, financial compensation, restitution of looted cultural property, a global reparations fund, and reforms to international financial institutions. So they're asking for money for these same places that didn't exist. The British government, as we know it now, was a kingdom. For the most, only America only became a country 250 years ago. Germany was just a bunch of tribes, basically. Those places didn't exist. They were kingdoms. So here's the question to Black Americans. It's simple. Are you ready now? Because they're doing the same thing they said you all been telling me for 6 years that I shouldn't do. That's what you all been telling. Y'all ready? If you're ready, let me know. Are you ready now? Are you ready to stop romanticizing Africa long enough to deal with the large historical reality? Are you ready to admit the foundational Black Americans need our own identity, our own claim, and our own remedy? Because clearly the Ghanaians and the Caribbeans aren't going to do it for us. We weren't even invited to their 19-point reparations plan meeting. You see? And see, that's why the delineation movement matters. This isn't about hating Africans as individuals. It's not about hating the continent. It's about telling the truth. Black Americans aren't merely Africans in America. We are descendants of people who were captured, sold, shipped, enslaved, bred, exploited, stripped of our land, language, inheritance, and national identity, and then forced to build a new people here. So if we're serious about reparations, we have to pursue every guilty party, not just the one that feels emotionally convenient. And if the federal government won't pay because we don't have leverage, then we have to create a claim that gives powerful institutions a reason to join us and back us and fund us and litigate with us and benefit from the recovery. And that's not begging, that's strategy. So if you're ready, type I'm ready. I got you now. Now, before we go any further, I want to share some videos with you guys. I hope you all learned something. I'm going to give you something. I hope you all learned something, but let me go ahead and do what I normally do. I want to share some videos with you all to kind of lay, I guess, the background, so we kind of all on the same page. You guys make sure you hit the #1 button if you appreciate what I'm doing. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I certainly would appreciate you all doing that. I want you all to check a couple of these videos out. Let's start with this. Let's start with this video. This is the Ghanaian president.
Remembrance and reparations to back a draft resolution recognising the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity.
There's no such thing as a slave. There were human beings who were trafficked and then enslaved by people who believed they could own those human beings as.
Respectfully, Mr. President, they were Black people who other Africans captured and sold to Europeans. Let's not get lost in the term traffic. They were captured and sold to Europeans almost 500 miles in. Okay, let me help you understand that. White people were not walking they weren't docking their ships on the west coast of Africa, getting off their boats, walking 500 miles inland in Africa, okay, and then marching those people back through the bush to the boat. That's not what they were doing. They were hopping off the boat. They would go to a slave pen. They would pick up all that Black Africans they wanted, put them on the ship, and sail to the Americas. That's what they did. So let's not confuse what trafficking is. But we'll let the president finish speaking.
As chattels.
The consequences of which he says still persist today, and accused the US of normalising the erasure of history.
Schools are being mandated to stop teaching students about the truth of slavery, segregation, and racism in American history courses.
What about the slavery and racism in Ghana, sir? What about that? What about the fact that you all Whenever Black Americans say, hey, you sold your own people into slavery, you say, oh, no, they weren't our own people. We are different people. They were enemy combatants. We captured them during war. Let's not do that. We're not doing that. Okay. Listen to this. Listen to this European leader respond to this guy, and based on what I just said, listen what he's saying without saying.
Slavery, segregation, and racism in American history courses.
There are some fake news articles suggesting that the sponsors of this resolution called into question President Trump's support of the Black community. We reject any such suggestions.
The result of the vote is as follows. In favor, 123, against 3, abstentions 52.
Argentina, Israel and the US voting against.
I want you to keep in mind, okay, the Royal British Navy had to patrol the west coast of Africa to stop slave ships from coming into the west coast, okay? I'm just saying. All right, this is how intense it was. They literally had to patrol the west coast of Africa to stop slave kingdoms from selling slaves into black people into slavery and sent to the New World. Just keep that in mind.
The resolution, the United Kingdom and members of the EU among those abstaining.
The UK is firmly of the view that we must not create a hierarchy of historical atrocities.
The Netherlands, the only European country to have issued a formal apology for its role in slavery, abstaining from the vote for similar reasons. UN Secretary
I just want y'all to keep in mind that these people participated heavily in slavery, and now they're the ones first in line to try to get reparations from these European governments. I want you to picture that, okay? Imagine somebody stealing your car and then trying to collect the insurance check on it. Just think about that.
The resolution was the United States. Were you disappointed by that vote?
So I would like to comment on the reasons they gave. They sought to create the impression that the time for negotiations have been short. The president of Ghana served notice last year in September. Immediately thereafter, we put together a broad-based coalition, including experts, academics, researchers, historians from all regions of the world. And we commenced negotiations. We allocated 3 hours, twice the time, and had multiple rounds of negotiations. So
I mean, I want my foundation of Black American brothers and sisters just to understand. Just recognize that you have people in Ghana negotiating with the American government in an attempt to get the American government to pay Ghana and these other African countries reparations for us. People that were captured by other Africans and sold to Europeans and put on boat. Think about that, the nerve of that. I'm just saying, the idea of that. And they're saying that the history is inaccurate and is being covered up.
So there are some that to us, it is clear that even if we gave them 50 years, they would say that the time is not enough. Secondly, the claim they have made that we are seeking to create a hierarchy of crimes. We have stated clearly that it is not about hierarchy. We are only speaking to a historical fact. Never in the history of mankind have we had such a systemic crime. We took over 3 centuries, more than 300.
Who participated in that crime, sir? Name all the people who participated in that crime.
100 years, with its consequences still lingering unto this day, manifesting in racism, in structural inequality. What is fundamental?
How much structural inequality and racism do you have in Ghana? Are you talking about America? Because we didn't ask you to speak for us. Did any of you all ask this Ghanaian representative to speak for us? Did you all ask him? Shout out to Big J. Thank you for being the first person to contribute to the super chat. Did you all ask him to speak for us? That's all I'm saying. Huh? I didn't ask him to speak for us. I don't know how much racism you have to deal with in Ghana. I'm assuming all the people in Ghana pretty much are is not a multicultural place. But I'm gonna let him finish speaking. But these people on the national stage asking for reparations from the taxpayer, black American taxpayers are gonna have to pay reparate. This is the idea. Think about it. Your taxes are gonna go up, paying reparations to people in Ghana, who are the descendants of the people who rounded you up and brought you and sold you for rifles and gunpowder and rum on the coast. Think about it. I want you to think about that. The irony.
Which nobody can deny is that more than 12.5 million people were forcibly removed from the continent. More than 3 million.
Who forced them on the boat? Who forced them on the boat, sir? Where are the people who what are their names? We want to know their names, sir. Okay? Because it didn't just start at the boat. They didn't walk themselves over there 500 miles by themselves. Okay, let's keep going.
People died, were tossed into the transatlantic ocean, which is a mass grave site. And in our country, Ghana, the country with the highest number of slave forts and castles, we are living witnesses on a daily basis.
So Ghana is the highest number of slave forts and castles. That's what you're telling us. Okay, who was filling those slave forts and castles up? Where were those bodies come? Who was walking in the interior? You telling me some white European man from Scandinavia was walking through hot, humid Africa in 1750, rounding up black people? You sure? Maybe it looked like he had some help. Okay, they didn't have Uber back then. Oh, it wasn't no Uber Eats. They wasn't doing Uber delivery slaves to the coast, sir. Okay.
When we go into those castles and forts and we see the door of no return, we break down.
One of the key reasons raised by the United States for which reason they are abstaining is the lack of clarity on who is the recipient of the reparatory justice. What is your response to that?
Yeah, who is the recipient? Who's getting this money?
It's surprising. In this resolution, talked about frameworks which will put in place that will take care.
Who's getting the money? I don't want to hear about frameworks that are put in place. Which African lord, okay, strongman is going to take the money and go dump it in some European bank? Which one of y'all is getting it? That's what I want to know. I don't know what that means. Framework. Somebody type framework. It was a straightforward question. Who is getting the money?
Of the consequences, the lack of opportunity, discrimination, the degradation of people of color. And we have made clear that African leaders...
Hold on a minute. You mean does that include Mexicans and Arabs and Asians? Is this what you're saying, sir? So people of color, somebody type people of color in the chat room. Sir, who put him in charge? Do y'all have his cell phone number? Can somebody send it? I want y'all to find him on Twitter and ask him who's getting the money. That's what I want to know.
Caribbean leaders are not looking for money. It goes against our conscience to seek to profit from this. We are talking about...
I don't believe you. I don't believe you, sir. I don't believe you're not looking for money, sir.
About courses to deal with the structural inequalities. And we are also talking about the return of artifacts. There are thousands of artifacts from Egypt all the way to the Ashanti Kingdom in Ghana. Again, it is totally wrong for...
So y'all want your artifacts back, but you don't want your black Americans back. You don't want the blacks back. You don't want the people you sold over here. You just want the mask and the spears back. That's what you don't want black. Y'all hear that? They don't want us back. They're not sending for us. I just want you to keep in mind, they're not sending for us, you all. They're sending for artifacts. Okay, they want their Ashanti beads back and so on and so forth. Not us. I'm just asking questions. That's all I'm doing. Be offended if you want to, but this is what it sounds like to me.
A claim to be made that there is no clarity about who benefits from reparatory justice.
You still ain't answered the question. Who benefits? Who's getting the money, sir? Where's the money going, sir? With your Brooks Brothers suit on. Where's the money going? Who's getting the money? No answer. No answer at all. Okay? Now, for you all who may not be aware of, what it was like, this young lady posted the video up. She went and visited a place called Goree Island. And I think I have her video here. Well, actually, y'all remember this guy right here. He's an African, and he seems a little upset. He seems a little, look, think about it.
No. Ghana has, so apparently Ghana has gone and done the exact same thing the FBAs were worried about. No, Ghana has done the exact thing FBAs were worried about. Foundational Black Americans, they said they were delineating because they want to have their reparations. And what does Ghana do? Ghana goes to the United Nations and asks for reparations. Africa, why?
I don't know. Tell me.
Africa, why?
Because they want the money, sir.
Did you ask for their opinion?
No, they didn't ask.
Did you ask for their opinion?
No, they didn't. They didn't ask us anything.
What is this, bro?
It's a scam.
Foundational Black Americans said they want to delineate so they can get their reparations. And what does Ghana do? Ghana goes to the UN and asks for reparations. And you wonder why these people don't like you.
Yeah, we don't trust y'all.
And you wonder what, you know what? Did you ask anyone's opinion?
They
like
didn't.
The black people in the Caribbean, did you ask them?
I don't know about
the ones in Haiti, Jamaica?
I don't know. Not my business.
Did you ask them?
How
about the ones in Britain? Did you ask them?
In Chicago.
Did anyone consent to this?
No, we didn't.
Nah, because this is why Black Americans keep getting upset with Africans. We just...
Yeah, that's what we've been saying the whole time. I know.
I'm live on the backup page. Join me, let's talk about it.
No, I'm good. I'm good, man. I'm gonna ease on up out of here. But that's exactly what we saying. That's exactly why we don't trust y'all. This is, even when the Africans start saying, yeah, that's a little slick, then you know it's slick. All right. Do y'all want, who in here, which Black American wants reparations dollars to go to Ghana? If you all want reparations dollars to go to Ghana, I want y'all to type yes in the chat room. If you want reparations, that you want to raise your tax dollars to send it to God, let me know.
So much more difficult to digest what happened during slavery, just being here.
There you go.
Seeing it versus reading about it in a book.
This year for Black History Month, I wanted to explore my ancestry. So I started at the door of no return, the final door my ancestors walked through before being forced into slavery in America.
Bring them to Goree. The slaves stay here 3 months. After 3 months, they go to, here is where? America, United States. When they go here, is which country? Brazil.
Oh, Brazil, yeah.
Brasilia, other would die, like Caribbean island, Jamaica. The troublemakers, they go to Jamaica or Haiti. And you have this triangular commerce.
So they know the history. They know what happened. Because oftentimes when we talk to people in Africa, we don't know anything about slavery. He know the whole history. This is how they did. They stayed here for 3 months. And then what happened? The ship picked them up. And it depends on what ship it was. You know, the Scandinavians, they always coming through. They come through deep. The British, they only come through every now and then. And the Spanish, boy, you don't ever want to get on a Spanish ship. They have no amenities available for anybody. They have no concierge service, no room service, nothing. Okay, those are the worst ships to be on. This dude got the whole breakdown. He got the whole breakdown. You cannot tell me these African people did not know what slavery was, and they did not know what kind of slavery we were dealing with. In fact, it was a lot of Africans who end up being enslaved. They got thrown on a boat, end up being enslaved, and then they got in the slave business themselves. So, you know, playing naive is no longer acceptable. This young lady is over here visiting Africa. And, you know, it's also a very emotional tour for Black Americans, because this is our real history. You see, this is what our ancestors had to endure. And so, you know, it's an emotional thing. We want to lash out, but we don't want to lash out. We don't want to hold that other party guilty. Okay, let's keep listening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Walking through the streets that I know that they were shackled in, I couldn't help but get emotional. Looking out the same tiny window, imagining freedom from a tiny holding cell holding more than 20 plus people. Seeing the building where they held women that they raped and never let go. Thanking God it wasn't me, and crying for my ancestors who had to endure.
So they raped them before they even got on the boat. That's what I'm trying to say. Before they even got on the boat, we were already being mistreated. So when these Africans say, oh, chattel slavery was different, y'all were doing the same thing over there. That's what you were doing the same thing over there that was happening to us over here. You can't tell me you weren't. And the reason I know is because I see what's going on in South Africa right now. I see how you all are treating those South Africans. You're slapping them upside the head, treating them horribly. This is how we were getting treated. Look at this. This is how your brother African. Yeah. That's what they were doing. You don't think our ancestors willingly got on those boats, do you? This is how our African brothers, somebody type African brothers, were treated. In the name of profit. Okay, that's what they did in the name of profit. Now, we ain't finished yet. We still laying the foundation. Okay, we are laying the foundation. It's necessary to lay the foundation. I want you to see all the ugliness before I commence, because you know some of you all still romanticize Africa. You still believe, oh, Africa's the motherland, and we just gonna escape these big bad Americans, and we're gonna go over to Africa, and we're gonna get treated well, and they didn't treat you well on your way out. Why would they treat you well on your way back? I'm just speaking hypothetically. Okay, I'm just saying. I found this very interesting. This came out a few, I guess, months ago or whatever. It's this little. We apologize, and I don't know who's been coming up with this, but check this out. I thought this was interesting.
American,
fair use.
Listen close.
We are not your enemy.
We are not your enemy. We are the voice from Africa.
We come with no gun, no flag, only memory.
What your leaders did, they did not tell you.
We are here to tell you now.
Sit down and listen well.
They built the banks on our backs.
They got the little
They built the labs on our blood. They built the bombs from our soil. They built the empires from our bones, and they never told you a word.
What was stolen from black people?
The land,
the gold,
the bodies,
the names,
the hands.
Y'all sold us, sir. Y'all let them over there and for gold and oil and whatever you all participated at. You keep blaming these white folk. Yeah, it was plenty of blame for white folk. I want you to feel blame too. Okay, I want you white folks to feel blame. However, it's more blame to go around. The other guilty party. Okay, the other guilty party that we refuse to talk about. You see, these people here, they sold us. Yeah, you sold us, and we had to deal with all this. That's the whole point that I'm trying to explain to people. The medical experimentation, the grapes, the chattel slavery, etc. And see, here's the thing. I'm not the only black person on here. Some of you white folks are like, wow, I didn't know that they all feel like that. My God. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm not the only black person that feels like that. But we all are coming to the same realization that there's another guilty party.
Umbrellas. You sold our ancestors for fine china. You sold our ancestors for any little trinket that you could get. And now, you mad because other nations got rich off the slave trade and all you got was some beans. And now you want to sit here and try to ask for $100 million to translate the place where you stole and held our ancestors. And let me repeat the sentiment of my sister that just spoke. Jamani Williams, I saw you earlier. You don't speak for us because you don't have our blood. Al Sharpton, you have our blood, but you still don't speak for us. You are a shakedown artist, a preacher without a church. You don't speak for us.
Oh, yeah.
Who else? Is that Clark?
Yeah, I saw that.
You might have been voted in, but you wasn't voted in by us, and you don't speak for us. And that's why we don't.
So what you see happening right now is this is when the Ghanaian president came to New York and he was in the UN, and you have Foundation of Black Americans across the street heckling him and saying, you don't speak for us. How dare you come over here and try to get reparations money from the United States government and European governments for the atrocities that you put upon us. You see, he called Reverend Al Sharpton a shakedown artist, and they were distinguishing between themselves and all those other black people who may or may not be African and Caribbean, but they are not foundational Black American. So this is what you're dealing with. All right. So it's not just me. So this has been an undercurrent, you know, like those secret Black people who are conservatives, kind of low key, but they don't want to speak. Now it's all coming out in the open. I'll let this finish rolling.
Make sure that you lose all these extra bodies that you put on the.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is not 1986. Okay, this is not 1996 when we were walking around with Africa Unite, Fight the Power. There's been a lot of growth that has happened amongst Black Americans over the past several years. And part of that growth is accepting the reality that a lot of these African and Caribbean folk, but you know, Caribbeans share the same history, but specifically the Africans have been, you know, we're not the same people. And no matter what you say, we're just not. I found this video very interesting. I'm going to let this play. This is an African calling a foundational Black American man the N-word. And you have a sister who is at the, this is a fast food restaurant, and she is really putting him in place about using the N-word. I want you all to listen very carefully. If you don't believe that foundational Black Americans don't recognize that we're different people, listen to what this lady has to say.
Danny.
That's how niggas get when they get you to get it.
Man, see, this the shit that you got to go through. Unbelievable.
That's not nice for you to say.
Really?
Especially being an African descendant. You and us are different, so for you to refer to him as a hungry nigga is disrespectful. That's like a white man calling him a nigga. Really? Don't do it.
Damn.
Don't do it.
Tell him.
If somebody walking in referring to you as a nigga, you gonna holler what? You're African, right? Or if somebody call you Black, you gonna holler you African, right? Right. So yeah, so stand on it. He not no nigga. Don't call him no nigga. Don't refer to him no nigga. Record him how you want. Like I said, that's not okay. That's not okay. No, that's not how niggas get it. Watch your mouth. That's a niggas get it. No,
I appreciate you.
I can use any word I want.
No, you can't. Because he walking in car refer to you as Black, what you gonna holler? You're African, right?
Bro, let me tell you something.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something.
11:35.
Oh, I was gonna say,
what you feel free.
Now I want you to understand, you got this African from the continent who's sitting there insisting on being calling an FBA man a hungry N-word. And you got a sister saying that's not something that needs to be coming out of your mouth because you don't have the shared experience that we do. We may, unfortunately, still use that word as a term of endearment, but we don't want Africans or anybody else using it. So for all the white people listening to this broadcast, you listen to a lot of hip hop, especially that East Coast hip hop, because I knew it was popular. But you have to understand a lot of those East Coast rappers, they were either from the Caribbean or they had a lot of Caribbean or African influence. They were not foundational Black Americans. They weren't Black Americans. That is not a term that we use as a term of endearment. It only became popular because of that hip hop culture. It's disrespectful. If you call certain people an N-word from a certain generation, they will treat it as what it is, an insult. It would be no different than, you know, calling a Jewish person a slang name or an Irish person a slang name or a racial epithet or a Italian person a racial epithet. They do not take kindly to that. And that you guys know, you watched enough old school mafia movies to know what I'm talking about. But for this African person from the African continent to refer to this Black American man as the N-word is disrespectful. And this is part of the reason why we've delineated. Let's continue listening.
I'll do just the mashed potatoes with my bad. Oh yeah, we fucking with you. Yeah, I appreciate it. You're good sport. But yeah, we just be fucking with people. We do comedy too, so that's the main thing.
So you know him?
Yeah, I know him. We both found, you know, we got the glasses.
He's trying to mitigate. Yeah, we friends, but it's inappropriate. It's inappropriate. It shouldn't have been used. I like the way she did that. I tell people all the time, I don't operate like that. And the other thing you have to understand is that, you know, not all Black people that come to this country we don't treat them all the same. Some of them they contribute, they mind their business, they leave us alone. But one thing you will notice is that most of them, when they show up, they don't move to places like Utah. They move to Atlanta, they move to Houston, they move to DC, they move to Dallas, where there already other Black people are. so that they don't have to try to build America like we did. Check this out.
Country, you have little room for error. Look at the year of return. What are the Black Americans, the Caribbeans, the Black British, what are they calling us to do when we come there? Exactly. And do what else? And build and train and to do what? Let me give you the Ugandan perspective. What are you? What's the favorite sin of Ugandans? What are you adding on us? Isn't that what Ugandans say? Yeah. What if the South Africans act?
For you all who don't know, this gentleman's name is O'Shea Duke Jackson. He's a very popular YouTuber in the Black sector of YouTube. And he lives in Africa, in different various countries in Africa. And he has this program called the Kinganda channel. It's very informative. I actually saw this clip. I think it was on Instagram or I'm not sure, TikTok. But he goes into some great detail about the contrast between how Black Americans are treated when we are in Africa and how Africans or their expectations when they come to the United States.
Ask the question, what's the question? What are you adding on us? And if you're going to say, listen, okay, we failed the system, you're right. But what are you adding on us? Because when they look at me as a Black American in Uganda, even though Uganda is not South Africa, what do they ask?
What are you adding on us?
That's all they ask. So our situation is what it is, but you're foreign here, so what?
What are you adding
Now, if you don't add anything on what is there, it is very difficult to say, well, you're looking at the wrong person, because I don't see the wrong person. What I see is you. And I may not be educated to see that, but I see you. And I see that you're not adding anything on me. So now I see that because you're next to me. You're in here, bro, where I live. See, me and TJ don't live. We don't interfere in African business. But if you set up a shop in my business and I see you, you're...
Yeah. When Black Americans go to other countries, we mind our business. We don't get involved in their politics. We don't get involved in whatever they have going on. We keep our head down, mind our business. We're there for the food and the sand and the beach and the chill environment. We're not there to change things. When Africans come to this country, and Caribbeans also, they want to get all involved in our politics and run for office, et cetera, just really get off into our business. And they don't really understand the culture of the country or how things work. And that presents a problem.
My neighborhood. So you're here with me. Why are you not in Santon? Why are you not in, what's the other neighborhood there? Midrand. You're here with me, but you're not adding anything on me. And then you're telling me I should be focused on somebody else. I don't want to hear that shit. I don't want to hear that one Africa shit. What the are you doing here? That's how I feel about you. Yeah. And again, both things can be true at the same time. And so what I'm saying at the same time is,
yeah, so O'Shea, let them have it. You know, it's like you come to the United States, you get off in our business. We come over there, you're not bringing anything to us, but what you want to do is you want to tell us how things should be run in our country. And you're just not equipped to do that because you don't understand the culture and you don't understand what the forces are the political forces you're dealing with. And so you're just making a bunch of missteps. But let's continue looking. You guys know this. This guy's name is Donald Byron Donald. This gentleman, I think one of his parents is from Panama. The other one is from I don't know what other Caribbean country, but he's running for governor of Florida. Now I want you to listen to what he has to say about reparations. And the first thing you should ask is, why is it any of this guy's business? But let's listen.
My mother's Jamaican. My father's Panamanian. You have a lot of Black people in this country who are not descendants of the American slave trade. So I already know off top, there's a lot of Black people in America who aren't going to be able to get that kind of benefit.
Support reparations for what Leonard just deemed as, quote,
fair use,
foundational Black Americans?
No, I don't. No. But I want to explain that.
So here you got a Caribbean first-generation immigrant who's in this country, walks amongst foundational Black Americans, and now he is running for political office and he's opposed to reparations. I just want you to think about that. And this is why a lot of Black Americans have a problem with immigrants. This is why we're delineating. And we're getting to the point now, it's not just about whether you're Black or not. We want to know, what is your lineage? In other words, do you have any skin in the game? Okay, who are you and where you came from? Check this out. This has been going on for a while.
Reparations, you call it ignorant?
No, because you don't.
What makes you think you have a right to my birthright? Why are you even talking to me about it?
So why do you feel like I can't talk to you about it?
Because you really have no claim to it. So if you're not contributing to the conversation and you're not helping and you're downing me, you should really shut the fuck up.
Because I'm African, I don't have a claim to it.
What you mean you don't? It's called American Descendants of Slaves, my G.
I was born in Texas.
My G, it's called American Descendants of Slaves. Your parents are not American descendants of slaves. Your parents are from Africa, correct?
Yes.
That means you have they didn't pick no cotton here. They wasn't brought over here in fucking slavery. They just got over here in fucking last generation. What the fuck are you talking about? You just gonna turn this into whatever the fuck you want to? Why are you trying to disrespect my birthright?
So allow me to respond. That the people you're talking about, a large part of them were African.
Okay.
And they had children who are descendants of those Africans.
American.
So that guy's, the Nigerian's argument is that, well, their children were kidnapped. And so because of that, the parents who lost the children or their children were captured and sold, they should be compensated for losing their ancestors or their descendants who ended up over here. Okay, so you're telling me that the people who descended from the people who were actually sold aren't entitled to reparations, and the people who stayed are? I'm just saying. I want you to think. But you see the mess this creates? You got all these Africans over here and all these Caribbean folk over here. And they're going to jump in and say, well, I'm oppressed too. I've been here. My parents have been here since 1997, and we've had to experience racism. We got a ticket in Alabama one day driving through I-20. And so we should be able to read, and the cop was racist to us. He called us darkies, right? That's not the historical oppression that Black Americans have had to deal with. That's not redlining. That's not Jim Crow. On top of that, they didn't fight in any wars. They didn't go through World War II, World War I. They didn't fight in the War of 1812. They didn't fight in the Civil War. They didn't have to deal with Jim Crow. They didn't have the GI Bill. Not distributed, none of that. So it's different. It's different lineage, different people, but that's their rationale. Okay. And it's offensive to foundational Black Americans to have to entertain these
descendants of slaves. What are you dumb? Do you understand the word American slavery here?
Absolutely.
Are you stupid now? Have you lost a fucking noggin?
Oh, I'm sorry about that profanity. My God, they got aggressive. Yeah, but it's offensive. And, and Black Americans recognize it as nothing more than what it is. It's just a straight up scam. You see what I mean? And we don't like that. It's a scam. Can we all just admit that it's a scam? They feel like Black America, they want everything. Somebody type destiny swap. It's like they want a destiny swap. And look, I know you got reparations. I know you have Black African friends. I know you have Caribbean. I know you do. I'm saying, but it's not about the individual. It's about the collective group. So let's listen to this next video.
By them getting y'all out is getting us closer to reparations because we can fight our government one-on-one. You know what I'm saying? You are our reparations. Every dollar in your pocket is reparations. Every education y'all got in this country is our affirmative action. Every doctor in America that's from Africa or the Caribbean took from a Black American. Took opportunities from Black American. You only deserve what you put in. Y'all ain't put in nothing, so you deserve nothing. Y'all get way more than y'all deserve in this country.
Yeah.
Way more. Y'all even get.
You're not entitled to anything. You're only here because we're here. You don't move to places where it's just white people. You move to places, you integrate yourselves into places where there are Black Americans who already existed. It makes it easy for you to blend in.
More shit than we got, and we are from this country. And y'all want us to stand with y'all when y'all get more than us in our country. We have to die for it, where it's just given to you on a fucking gold platter. No, go back to hell. Go back to your shithole country. That's what we want. We want y'all humbled again. We want your kids with pot bellies and starving again in rags. We want y'all back in huts. We want flies in your face. We want the cartels to chase y'all down and have y'all scared to death. We want y'all to be refugees in your own country again. We want all y'all to be we want all y'all to be terrorized back in your country, because when we was terrorized in our country, there was no refugee status for us. Nobody took us in. Nobody sent us no fucking money or no aid. Y'all don't deserve none of it.
No love lost.
Why is it immigrants are not stopping reparations? My ancestors come from the Caribbean, and there were slaves in the
so then maybe it
Caribbean, and
maybe it wouldn't qualify for the American reparations.
Well, here's the challenge. There are so many difficulties with trying to enact reparations.
So again, this is a bunch of immigrants who are against reparations for foundational Black Americans. Just listen to
In
it.
part because the question is who gets them. Potentially, I could fall into that category. I honestly have called a pipe dream in the past, and I think that's what it is.
Well, it would be nice if there was an elegant, simple solution to all sorts of complicated problems. You're not actually talking about how to fix those problems if you're only talking about reparations. If we're only debating how we're going to parcel out responsibility for something that happened more than a century ago. And we're probably never going to do this. It's not clear to me why we're pursuing this thing.
Is it fair that there's no reparations, no restitution, nothing?
Should the Irish get reparations, by the way? Irish need not.
Somebody type tether in the chat room. Make sure you spell it correctly. Somebody type tether in the chat room.
Apply signs when they came here during the progressive era. I mean, how far do we want to take this down? Are we acknowledging that there are ugly spots in history? Because 60% of the world would be entitled to slave reparations if you wanted to play that game.
Well, here's a fact. Slavery ended 154 years ago. It's been a long, long time since we had slavery in this country. And you have people like my family. I'm Black, but my family came to the United States in 1962. My parents are from Costa Rica. Do I get a check?
I did a couple of essay contests that I actually won.
Fair use.
And I won like NAACP AXO award for this essay and something else. I can't remember another, like I ended up winning money. And the essay was, do you think Black people should get reparations? And I was like, no, you didn't work for it.
Every time one of them say something you don't like, type tether in the chat room.
Why are you so against reparations? Valerie, it's a matter of a waste of time. We've got so much to do. And yet you have people who invest so much energy and attention on what I consider to be a dead-end idea, a dead-end movement.
If we were to pay reparations today, we would only divide the country further. We would insult many Black Americans by putting a price on the suffering of their ancestors.
Reparations from slavery and Black victimization is about to be shoved down our throats for the most wretched politics.
Now again, the Japanese got reparations, Jewish people got reparations. Hell, did you all know that the slave owners from the plantations got reparations? Did you all know that? Did they tell y'all that in your school? Did they tell y'all that? I'm shocked.
Compensated, and I think that they've let the problem get so big now that it is complicated in a sense of who should get paid, and it is complicated in a sense of who should pay, because just like when there's instances of police brutality where people then settle, whether in court, out of court, or whatever, it's actually the taxpayer, not the police union, that pays that money. So you partially paid yourself back for getting your ass whooped in the street.
Growing up in England and understanding that the slave owners were paid up until 2015 to give up slavery. Did you realize that? That was still being paid in England up until 2015. And so the discussion about reparations that's going on now kind of makes me smile and laugh, and not that people don't realize that we had to pay for that. And now we're asking to be brought on the same level.
I feel like.
So again, not every Black immigrant is a tether, okay? But what they mean when they say that term tether, they mean someone who has tethered themselves to the Black American experience here in the United States, and then they claw their way inside, and then they undermine it, okay? We're not talking about every Black person. It's not every Black person is a tether who comes to this country. That's not what we're saying. But I believe that I can say that a lot of Black Americans are really tired of Black immigrants undermining our political process, our political power, taking over positions, and then using those positions for their own personal advancement.
Explain to me what a tether is.
So if you have a reparations panel, you have a group of people, 7 people, 10 people, all of them Black. They look Black. When you think Black, you think Black Americans first, usually. They look Black. However, you will have people who are not even foundationally Black American who don't have ancestors who suffered through what foundational Black Americans have suffered through in the developing of this country. You have those who feel that they are not entitled to the benefits that we have suffered from. And because they're not entitled to those benefits, they will vote against reparations. And that goes into colonialism and white supremacy. When they come over here, they want to integrate into white supremacy and colonialism. So they will be racist. They will be prejudiced. They will not greet you when you speak. Those are the tethers, not just immigrants in general. There's some good immigrants too.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think that's fair. We've had some great Black people who've come to this country who are of Caribbean descent, one of which comes to mind. When I was young, he was extremely popular. His name was Minister Louis Farrakhan. And
print up a lot of money. And say, all right.
Now, I believe his parents were both Jamaican.
Negroes. We'll give every family that's a descendant of slaves $50,000. And some of you would settle for that. Not as long as I'm in the world.
He was very popular in the 1990s. I believe his wife passed away, Khadijah, Mother Khadijah. She was, they had been married 72 years. But again, you know, so it's not every Black immigrant. We don't want to throw them all under the bus, but golly, it's enough of them that, you know, you're just creating too many problems. Okay, but we'll read a few.
Reparations is determined by the harm.
Okay.
So there are 3 errors of harm that many activists include within the reparations movement. The first error of harm is the transatlantic slave trade and chattel slavery. So the who there would be descendants of Africans enslaved in the United States.
I agree with that. Foundational Black Americans, that's who we're descendant of, you know, including the Black indigenous population that was put on those plantations. That's a story for another day, but I get the gist of what you're saying. I agree.
The second error of harm is Jim Crow. Jim Crow is a continuation, a vestige of chattel slavery, and also a slew of discriminatory practices that would include descendants of Africans enslaved in the United States and some Black immigrant groups.
No.
There it is, family. Family, we gotta be
errors of harm.
You got a lot of basically what she's saying is not just the descendants of African slaves, but those people who came to this country.
There it is, family.
Those people who came to the country voluntarily. And then after coming here voluntarily experienced slavery, they should be entitled to reparations too. And that just opens the floodgate for abuse, fraud, and discrimination. And that's why the avenue that I am suggesting is far better, in my opinion, because it basically turns this whole argument on its head, and it gives us a lot more range than we otherwise would have. Now, I'm going to go ahead and proceed with the lecture proper. And I want you all to shout out to Big J. Thank you so much. And I hope you all appreciate the time and energy and effort I put into this, because this has been a half a decade project at this point. Now, I have one more video to show you at some point. I will bring it in, and I'm just going to bring it all home. But again, let me say this, okay? Africa is the future. And anyone who understands the next 50 to 100 years understands why. Somebody type 50 to 100. And the world is moving into an era driven by energy, batteries, electric vehicles, artificial intelligence, data centers, advanced manufacturing, defense technology, and infrastructure. None of that happens without minerals, land, labor, ports, power, water, and young populations. Africa has all of that. Okay? The continent holds a major share of the world's critical minerals, including about 55% of the global cobalt. 48% of manganese, 21% of natural graphite, and a significant amount of copper, nickel, lithium, platinum, natural gas. And these aren't symbolic resources. These are the raw materials that will power batteries, semiconductors, weapon systems, and clean energy, construction, transportation, and the next industrial age. And that International Energy Agency, or should I say the International Energy Agency, has made it clear that minerals like lithium, cobalt, nickel, manganese, and graphite, and systems, shout out to Mr. J, and basically we need that for modern technology. So when we talk about Africa, we're not talking about poverty as a destiny. We're talking about one of the richest land masses on earth, sitting on materials the world will need to survive, build, compete, and dominate in the next century. The problem is that Africa has never, it's never that Africa doesn't have any resources. And I know this is boring. I know it is, but it's important. And we can't just sit up here and talk about stuff. We got to talk about the future. Somebody talk the future in the chat. We have to talk about it, okay? And I know it's boring, but if you just get there with me, we'll get there. See, the problem with Africa is historically it's been mismanaged. Historically, it's been exploited, it's been underdeveloped, and it's been politically unstable. European colonialism, they come in and extract wealth. It drew artificial borders. It broke up political systems. It turned vast regions into just raw material depots for foreign powers. But post-colonial African leadership also has to be discussed honestly. You got too many failed governments over there. And all they want to do is convert mineral wealth into private wealth. Too many leaders are corrupt. Too many of the countries are caught in debt traps. They have weak institutions. They have poor infrastructure. They have a lot of foreign dependency and resource concessions, underpriced contracts. You see, and the elite Africans, they capture the wealth and they leave. And so the African Development Bank and the other analysts have warned about the danger of poorly structured resource-backed financing, undervalued resources, and the loss of control over mineral wealth. In plain English, what I'm trying to say is Africa has minerals, but it doesn't have governance, it doesn't have bargaining power, and it doesn't have industrial policy or leadership discipline to make sure that people that the people who should benefit. So the next century won't be built on speeches. It's going to be built on cobalt from the Congo. It's going to be built on manganese from South Africa and Gabon and bauxite from Guinea and copper from Zambia and Congo, lithium from Zimbabwe, and emerging sites and platinum group metals from Southern Africa, and oil and gas from Nigeria, Angola, and Mozambique, and Senegal, and other producing states, and expanding consumer labor market. And Africa's population is also projected to rise dramatically. United Nations in 2024's population projections show that Africa's continued growth through the century, with the continent expected to reach almost 4 billion people by 2100. Okay, so in a little under 75 years, it's supposed to be 4 billion people over there. You see, and that's a lot. Sub-Saharan Africa alone is projected to increase sharply by the mid-century, while Europe and North America are pretty much stagnant. And that means Africa's future isn't only mineral-based. It's manpower and industry and agriculture and technology and geopolitical. So that's why foundation, somebody type FBA in the chat room. Let's get down to it. Foundational Black Americans have to understand what was taken from us before our, but for our forced removal / kidnapping and displacement and enslavement and conversion into labor, a labor class in America, we have a birthright claim to the future prosperity of that continent. We didn't voluntarily leave. We weren't immigrants. We were sold. We were sold. We were captured and sold. We weren't economic migrants. We were captured. We were transported. We were enslaved. We were bred and stripped of our language and our land and our kinship and our inheritance and our national identity, and then forced to build wealth for other people in a foreign land. So when Africa rises over the next 50 to 100 years, when the minerals become more valuable, when its population becomes more central, when its land and ports and energy and corridors and industrial zones become the center of global competition, foundational Black Americans have a moral and historical claim to say, but for that crime that you all committed against us, we will be sharing in that future. And this is why implementing my proposal matters right now. Somebody type right now in the chat room. We can't wait 50 years and then start begging African governments and foreign corporations and global institutions to let us in and give us what we already entitled to by blood and history and displacement. Somebody type right now. Because see, by then the deals are going to be signed and the minerals are going to be controlled and the trade routes are going to be locked down and the infrastructure will be built and our descendants will be standing outside the gate asking for permission. Somebody type right now. We have to move right now. This isn't a one-generation plan either. This is a generational, multi-generational structural plan. This is foresight. See, this is the same kind of thinking that our ancestors had when they came out of slavery and built HBCUs, one of which where I was educated. Shout out to Grambling State University and the Southern University Law Center in Baton Rouge. And Thurgood Marshall School of Law, where my wife got her law degree. Actually 2 law degrees, graduated number 1 in the class. Well, number 2 behind a white girl. Anyway, bottom line is, man, shout out to Thurgood Marshall. Shout out to all the HBCUs. But bottom line is our ancestors built Black neighborhoods, Black businesses, Black mutual aid societies where we can help each other and didn't need to depend on outside welfare. Shout out to all the landowning communities and the Black towns that they formed with almost nothing but vision and discipline. They weren't building only for themselves, they were building for us. And now it's our turn to build for the generations coming up after us. Every day we fail to prepare, we place our children and our grandchildren and our great-great-grandchildren at a severe disadvantage. Every year we delay. Other people move deeper into Africa's future while we remain stuck debating whether we should even make a claim. This is the day our ancestors prepared us for. Africa is the future. Africa is wealthy in raw materials, but historically it's been mismanaged. Africa is essential to the next century, but its wealth has been controlled and exploited and negotiated away too often by poor leadership. And foundational Black Americans whose ancestors were forcibly severed from that land and converted into property are entitled to our part. Somebody type right now. And if anybody on this planet has a claim, we do. And since nobody is going to simply give it to us, we have to build a legal, political, and economic strategy to recover what is rightfully ours. Not through begging, not through symbolism, not through empty speeches. We have to organize, litigate, get legislation in place, finance, and position ourselves now, right now, to take back what should have never been stolen from us and sold in the first place. And see, the strength of this proposal isn't that it's based on slavery in general. Somebody type specificity in the chat room, only the good spellers. It's not based on some raw, broad racial injury alone. This proposal is built around specific, illegal, post-1808 slave trading events that can be traced by name, date, vessel, source, distinction, government action, and historical record. Somebody type 1808 in the chat room. That's a very important date. That's what makes this different from every emotional reparations argument that has stalled for decades. Somebody type right now. See, we aren't asking the court to fix the entire history of slavery in one lawsuit. We're identifying specific criminal acts that occurred after the United States and Great Britain had already outlawed the importation of enslaved Africans, and we're tying those acts to specific African successor states, specific descendant communities, and specific legal remedies. Somebody type Africa Town in the chat room. Somebody type Cujo Lewis in the chat room. And see, that's the legal power of this framework. The law that matters is the act prohibiting the importation of slaves in 1807. It's still on the books right now. It took effect on January 1st, 1808. After that date, bringing Black people, enslaved Black people, across the Atlantic to the United States from Africa was illegal under federal U.S. law. And so then by 1820, Congress went even further and they classified participation in the international slave trade as piracy, stolen goods. You know, like the Jewish people got their stolen goods. Remember that? Huh? Okay. We're not going to go there right now. But what you need to understand is, so when enslaved Africans were trafficked into or toward the United States after 1808, the people involved were not simply operating within the normal slave system of the time. They were violating the law that already existed. That's the difference. Because what people will tell you is that slavery has been something that's been happening all across the world no matter what. But after 1808, the international slave trade bringing Africans from Africa to the United States became specifically illegal. And that's what allows us to say these weren't just immoral acts, they were illegal acts. They were illegal at the time they were committed. And we can trace the ships. We can trace the ships. And the first most famous ship is the Clotilda. Somebody type Clotilda in the chat room. In 1860, more than 50 years after that federal ban took effect, the Clotilda transported approximately 110 Africans from the Kingdom of Dahomey in what is now referred to as the Republic of Benin, and they brought them straight to Mobile, Alabama. Somebody type Africa Town in the chat room. And that voyage was financed by Timothy Mayer and captained by William Foster. And after the Africans were brought into Alabama, the ship was burned and sunk in an effort to hide the crime. The Africans trafficked on Clotilda were enslaved until the Civil War, which took place 3 or 4 years later. And after emancipation, many of them formed Africa Town, Alabama. And that's why the Clotilda is so important. It isn't merely a historical episode. It produced an identifiable descendant community. The ship is known, the year is known, the source region of where they came from is known, the destination is known, Mobile, Alabama, the perpetrator class is known, and the cover-up is known. The descendant community is still part of the historical record. And that gives the Clotilda a case special, it gives it a special legal force. The Kingdom of Dahomey was not a passive bystander. Dahomey was a centralized military state whose economy was deeply tied to war captives and slave sales. The captives connected to the Clotilda were taken from the Dahomey-controlled territory, including the port of Oida and the surrounding regions. So in my framework, that makes the Republic of Benin the modern successor target because Benin occupies and governs the territory connected to Dahomey's historical participation. And that claim isn't that every modern citizen of Benin has personally committed a wrong. That's not what we're saying. The claim is that the modern state inherited territory, it got the resources, the sovereignty, and the benefit from a predecessor system that participated in the illegal slave trafficking after 1808. Do y'all understand that? Do you all get that? That's not a hard concept. Do you want me to break it down in Ebonics? Basically, you bought it. Now you're responsible for everything that it did. Now, for some of you all, for my smart people, you like, well, where are those people now? Where are the descendants of the Clotilda? Somebody type Cujo Lewis in the chat room. Somebody type Cujo Lewis in the chat room. You should know this. We have a defendant. We have his grandson. Let me let y'all peep this out. I want you all to understand this. Some of you all may know this gentleman. I just learned about him. Listen to him. He is from Africa Town. Listen to what he tells you. Okay?
Like my granddaddy, Tony Lewis, you know, Cujo Lewis, bought the last slave ship to Mobile, Alabama. Yo, you don't know about your history, though, do it? You know about your history, Vlad? You don't even look at shit like that. Look at you watching horses and hot dogs.
So he is apparently the great grandson of Cujo Lewis. His daddy's name was Tony Lewis. So this young man whose name is Brazzy, I guess he's a very popular rapper. He's on Vlad TV, is it? He would be a person who would be a litigant or a plaintiff in my lawsuit against the Republic of Benin, which will be filed in Mobile, Alabama. See how easy that is? All we need is the legislation. You see what I mean? And had I known him within 2 years before the or 2 years after the Clotilda was found, we possibly theoretically could have filed a lawsuit then. Think about that, right? Even if for nothing else, just to fight it and get some stare decisis on the books. Because you have a 2-year time period to file a lawsuit for particular losses. And they have something called the discovery rule. So if you just discovered the Clotilda within that 2-year time period, technically you could argue that you could file a lawsuit in good faith. But all that can be corrected with an extension of the statute of limitations, just like what Trump did for the Jewish people to recover their stolen property. Think about that. Do you all know who this rapper is? His name is Brazzy. He apparently must be pretty popular if he's on Vlad's TV. But listen to his story.
I'm telling you, you know the last slave ship got dropped off at?
Listen.
Say it again. Do you know where the last slave ship got dropped off at? Where the last slave ship landed?
Where was that?
In my city, my hood. Right, my hood, Africa Town. I'm from Mobile, Alabama. Look it up. Just Google it while you're on here. That's the last slave ship. That's why my mentality like this. I'm telling you, my granddaddy Cujo Lewis, like, he the one that bought this slave ship over this bitch. He escaped everybody. You know what I'm saying? Just look it up. Just really look into it, man. It's real life. But you got your phone, y'all Google while y'all phone.
His granddaddy is Cujo Lewis. His granddaddy was an African brought from Dahomey to Africa Town. His granddaddy is Cujo Lewis. You see how close this is? Now you all are telling me I can't file a lawsuit. Are y'all learning something? I got you. I'm here with you, baby. I'm gonna speak the truth to you. I'm here with you. I'm thinking 50 years ahead of time, 100 years ahead of. You see what I can do? Look at that. Look at God. Praise Moses. Let's keep listening to the young brother. Somebody call him up, tell him, call my office at 866 Law Big. I'd like to talk to him and all his cousins. I want him and all his cousins and everybody. I want to come to the family reunion. I'm coming to the family reunion. Tell him I'm showing up at the family reunion. I already got an Alabama lawyer in place. Okay. I got a call from a lawyer in France, an email from a lawyer in France. I'm ready. Somebody type Uncle D is ready. Ready. I'm gonna let the brother finish talking.
This shit real though. I got a picture on that real history, like let you know what's going on for Africa Town too. So it's certain shit I don't even do. Like, that's why I hate charging white.
Young man, I can probably put more money in your family's pocket, okay, than you ever gonna make rapping. Okay, give me 100 of your relatives. We get y'all about 300-400 million in mineral rights over in Africa right now. Let me know. Somebody type 866 Law Big in the chat room. You see, I got the toll-free number. If you've been in a car wreck, you can call me too. But I'm telling you, this is what I'm talking about. This guy is a direct descendant. It's easy to prove. And he would be entitled to be compensated And the country of Benin, who is a successor state, would have to, I mean, wouldn't that be magnificent if we could do that? If we could get a toehold in some of those African resources, and by my count, it's about 800,000 people just like him. Not all 45 million black people in the United States, but 800,000 people. How much money how much money would that generate for those businesses that would be offshoots? The construction companies, the mineral rights. These people could be selling mineral rights to American-based countries and oil countries and oil companies. And I mean, can you imagine that? This is money that would be brought to the United States. So we have an outside source of income and resources, a direct tie to Africa. This is not colonialism where we just pulled up a ship and just took over. We have foundational Black Americans who have a direct link to Africa and a right to title. It's all legal. In the courts in the United States would litigate it, they'd have due process. And once that federal judge issues that judgment, now it's just a matter of us saying, well, you can pay us now, or we can just start seizing those oil shipments and mineral rights that, in loads. We can do that. Look, hell with Iran. We don't need Iran anymore. We don't need that oil. We can get some of that Nigerian oil. Somebody type Nigerian oil. We don't need that Arab money, okay? we don't need that Arab money. I want y'all to understand that. You see, this is big business. These are the type of reparations plans that you take to a businessman like Donald Trump and say, hey, I got an idea. You know how we wanted to kind of, get a foothold into some of these developing countries and their mineral rights, cobalt. What about if I got 800,000 Black Americans who are here already, by the way, and we finance lawsuits, and we can have American-based law firms do it, and we can have American-based mineral rights and oil companies offer them joint projects, and they can get rich and we'll get richer. You see what I'm saying? I just want you to think about that. Think about it. And it's all legal because we're entitled to that. You can't tell Black Americans that we're not entitled to the wealth of Africa. We were forcibly kidnapped. Y'all stole us and sold us. So you can't tell. This man knows his history. He knows the oral history, and you can back it up with birth certificates, et cetera, et cetera. So he has a direct line. Tell me where I'm wrong at. Tell me. I'm going to let the brother speak again, let him finish, and then we're going to.
Really from the home.
Again, so tell me where I'm wrong. Where am I wrong? What have I missed? Huh? What have I missed anything? Have I missed anything? These Africans captured other Africans. They told us we weren't brothers and sisters. They sold us to Europeans and they brought us over here. And that young man is the product of that theft. He would have otherwise been in Africa and he would be entitled to the wealth and the bounty that Africa will be offering to the rest of the world in the next 50 years. Where am I wrong for saying he's entitled to it? And all it would take is just a $405 lawsuit filed in the federal court in Mobile, Alabama. Right? Now, the good thing is there are other ships. The second ship, the Wanderer, 1858, the Wanderer landed approximately 400 Africans on the Georgia coast. It is commonly associated with Jekyll Island and nearby areas decades after the slave trade had been banned. Okay, the Wanderer had been a luxury yacht before it was converted to an illegal slave ship. That alone shows you the deliberate nature of the crime. And this wasn't accidental. It wasn't confusion. It certainly wasn't ignorance. They knew exactly what they were doing. And this was a conscious criminal operation designated to evade American law and smuggle Africans into the United States for enslavement. And those Europeans didn't just go over there and run up into the interior of Africa. They were sold to them. Okay? And see, the Wanderer matters because it gives us another traceable post after 1808. And the ship is known, and the approximate number of Africans are known, and the land area is known. The date is known. The federal authorities became involved. Prosecutions have followed. So there's a criminal record. And even though the juries refused to convict those American captains and businessmen that illegally took the voyage, right? There was never any serious doubt as to what happened. And in my framework, the wanderer potentially implicates source regions tied to West and Central Africa, African coast, including Dahomey and Congo, right? And that matters. And see, and that makes the wanderer a broader successor state case because the captives may have come through multiple African trading networks from the interior and rather than one simple source point. But that doesn't weaken the claim. It shows how organized and international the illegal traffic remained even after the law supposedly shut down. These Africans were culpable. Those African natives. Then we have the Echo. This was 1858. It was intercepted by the United States Navy near Cuba after leaving the Congo and Angola with 450 Africans on board. And by the time the ship was captured, more than 140 Africans they had reportedly died from disease or starvation and abuse and brutal conditions on the voyage. The survivors went to Charleston, South Carolina. So we got Mobile, Alabama, Charleston, South Carolina. We got Georgia. Those black people are still there. Those descendants are still there. And see, again, speak back to the Echo. This is one of the most powerful examples because it involves a naval interdiction, documented mortality, federal handling, and judicial condemnation. This wasn't a rumor. This is not folklore that we're talking about. This was a sea ship possessed through legal authority. So there's a written record of this. This is naval history. All right. There's a written record of what happened. And those people are still there. Those foundational Black Americans can trace their roots directly back to Africa. And but for the crime committed against them by those Africans who participated in it, though at the behest of the governing body or chief or whatever you want to call it, which is now been taken over by the successor state, we would be there. So they're responsible. That's the Congo. Okay. Now, fourth, and I got one more, the Erie. This is 1860. The Erie was intercepted. Are you learning something? Are y'all learning something? Right? The Erie in 1860, the Erie was intercepted by the USS Mohican off the African coast. It was tied to the lower Congo and West Central African regions, and it was condemned as an illegal slaver. And the Africans on board were freed before the vessel could complete its criminal purpose. The Erie is important because it shows that the illegal slave trade was still active on the eve of the Civil War, more than 50 years after the ban of 1808. Ships were still being prepared and loaded and launched from Africa sources into the Atlantic slave trade. And the Erie strengthens the pattern. It shows that this wasn't just one rogue ship or one isolated smuggling operation. It was part of an ongoing illegal market that in the relevant source regions tied to the Erie was the Congo Basin. They wouldn't give it up. These African kings and queens would not give it up. They had trading networks, and these are all successor states. Shout out to Madman. So even if the Erie didn't land captives in the United States, the legal theory still matters because the ship was part of the same illegal post-1808 trafficking system, and the U.S. government's interdiction and condemnation helped establish that the conduct was unlawful, condemned, and traceable. We know what was going on. This is documented stuff. This is all in the Library of Congress. Are you all with me? Is anybody lost? Is anybody upset? Are y'all mad? Somebody type boule in the chat room. Somebody type sellout in the chat. Am I a sellout for saying we should get this money from these Africans? They not our people, right? I mean, we're of African descent, but does that make me boule? Or is this just a good idea? Now I'm gonna go through one more, but there are others. The last one is the Nightingale. In 1861, the Nightingale was seized by the USS Saratoga off the African coast, and it carried 960 Africans. This is one of the largest illegal slave cargoes documented in that period. And the captives were associated with the Bight of Benin and the Nigerian coast regions, including historically connected to the Yoruba, the Igbo, and the Niger Delta, and other regional areas. But the ship was condemned and the Africans on board were freed, and the Nightingale matters because of its scale. Just the years, damn near 1,000 people on a boat, tied up at the bottom of it, nearly 1,000 Africans. You can't dismiss that as some marginal number. Can't do that. And that number alone proves the organizational skill. Where did they come from? You think those white guys got off that boat and rounded up damn near 1,000 Africans? Or did they just simply go to the slave market that was being run by the chieftain or the queen who was there? See, that number and that number alone proves the infrastructure, supply and demand, and sovereign tolerance. In other words, they tolerated and they actively participated on a major level. And the Nightingale gives a legal strategy, another important anchor, against modern day Nigeria, where all the oil is. Somebody type that oil money. Okay, again, this isn't that the modern nation state existed. I'm not saying that, and not in its current form or at that time. That's not what I'm saying. The theory is the current states inherited the territory, the resources, the political control, and the economic benefit of the predecessor systems, and that helps supply the illegal slave trade. So if the successor state can inherit assets, you get the money, you get the territory, you get the treaties, you get the wealth, you get the resources and the international status, then the question must be asked, well, why can't you now inherit the debt and the responsibility, especially when the harm involved human trafficking and land disposition and permanent lineage destruction? See, look, family, these ships reveal a pattern. The Clotilda, the Wanderer, the Echo, the Erie, the Nightingale, these different ships, these different years, these different routes and captives, different source regions, but the same legal problem. After 1808, Africans were still participating in the capture of other Africans and selling them through the illegal transatlantic system of slavery. And African chieftains continued to participate in supplying human beings to the illegal market. It was illegal at that point. And the United States had already outlawed it. It was illegal under U.S. law, and that's all that matters. The law was already on the books. Anytime before that, it wasn't illegal. And that's what most of these people who are anti-reparation say. But after 1808, it was illegal. So that means we're not asking a modern judge to invent illegality retroactively. We're asking a judge to recognize the illegal consequences of illegality that existed at that time. We just ask you, look, it was illegal then, and look at the product. Right now, if you dump some sort of chemical waste on some land somewhere in the middle of nowhere, under certain environmental rules, it doesn't matter if it's 50 years or 100 years later, you're still responsible. Your successors are responsible for it. You understand what I'm saying? There is no statute of limits. Somebody needs to come clean it up. And that's the same way I'm looking at this. So it's just a matter of a law being put in place to say, yeah, we're going to extend the statute of limitation. You see, all we're asking them to do is recognize the legal consequences of the illegality that existed at the time. And that's why these ships matter so much to the proposed legislation. The foundational Black American Slave Trade Restorative Justice Act is designed to give eligible descendants, like that young man Brazzy, a private right of action in federal court against African sovereigns whose predecessor entities participated in the post-1808 illegal trafficking event. So basically, it just gives people like Brazzy the right to sue Benin. That's it. Him and all his cousins and family members. That's it. That's all I'm saying. Just sign it up. It would waive sovereign immunity for those covered claims. It would recognize successor-state liability. It would create a 50-year statute of limitations beginning with the discovery of your eligibility. In other words, when you find out, oh man, I'm descended from somebody from the Wanderer, you got 50 years to file suit. It would allow plaintiffs, foundational Black Americans, to seek compensatory damages, punitive damages, and restorative justice remedies. Can you imagine? See, it's one thing to get $25,000 or $50,000. It's another thing to get punitive damages and restorative justice. You have a $100,000, $1 million, $2 million claim against the country of Benin or the country of Nigeria. And you say, now I have a right to go after all their resources that they may have anywhere throughout the world. You see? And see, the ships are what give the proposal its backbone. Without the ships, the claim sounds like a broad historical grievance. We're not doing that. This is something narrowly for those people who can trace their lineage to one of those illegal ships that came to the United States after 1808. You see? Very specific. Has nothing to do with Congress. The American public is not going to pay anything. Has nothing to do with American tax dollars. This is a personal right between you and that country as it exists now. And with the ships, it becomes a legal case. A named ship gives a date. A date gives the law in effect at the time. The law gives a legality. The void gives us route. The route gives us a source region. The source region gives us a successor state. And the captives give us the descendants. And the descendants give us standing. See, everybody can't sue. Okay? You don't have standing. So that means all the Africans who are here are eliminated. All the Caribbeans are eliminated. It's just the people who can trace it. They're straight back to Africa. And the federal records give us proof. These are Navy records. This is how you build a lawsuit. This is how you move from slogans to legal architecture. And this is also why the claim must remain narrow. Everybody doesn't qualify. This isn't for every Black person in America. This isn't for every foundational Black American. This isn't for every person of African descent. This isn't for recent African immigrants, Caribbean immigrants, or a person who can't trace their claim to a specific historical injury. Unfortunately, it may just be lost to time. The strongest cases belong to people who can connect their lineage to documented illegal post-1808 trafficking, including voyages like the Clotilda and potentially other traceable ships or related smuggling networks. And that narrowness isn't weakness, it's a strength. It protects the claim from dilution, line jumping, political confusion, and emotional hijacking. And the Clotilda is the clearest because Africatown preserves its descendant community tied to a known voyage from Dahomey to Alabama. And the Wanderer is powerful because it involved a large illegal landing on Georgia coast and resulting in the federal attention and prosecution. And the Echo is powerful because the U.S. Navy intercepted it, and the mortality was horrific. Okay, same thing with the Erie and the Nightingale. They all have a play, but together these ships established the factual foundation for the proposal and legal strategy. They show that the illegal trade didn't end in 1808. They show that the African participation didn't disappear after the law change. They show that the crime continued with identifiable vessels and traceable records. They show that this isn't merely about American plantations, but about African capture. Okay, it's talking about what the African sale, the African land clearance, the African inheritance loss, the successor-state enrichment. They show that foundational Black Americans weren't simply deprived of wages in America, forced to work for free. We were severed from our land. We were severed from our mineral estates, our political communities, our citizenship, our intergenerational continuity in Africa. And that's the core of the case. And see, the beauty of this is you don't have to move back to Africa to get your money. You don't have to do anything. You line your lawsuit up, get your lawyers and say, okay, y'all need to pay. Stay right here. Spend your money right here if you choose. You understand? You see the brilliance of that? Our ancestors were removed from land, and that land didn't disappear. The agriculture value didn't disappear. The political jurisdiction didn't disappear. In 25, 30 years, you're going to have companies from all across the world going to Africa, digging minerals and oil and everything, paying leases, and the Africans are going to benefit. But what about us foundational Black Americans? What stake should we have in that? We can't wait 25 years. Somebody type right now. Huh? The successor states remain evolved, inherited, governed, taxed, leased, sold, extracted, and benefited. Meanwhile, the descendants of the people removed from the land were left in the United States with no national home, no inherited African citizenship, no tribal continuity, no mineral rights, no land base, no share in the future prosperity of the continent they were violently severed from. And that's why this is a property-based claim. Somebody type property rights. This is not emotional. We're not asking for back labor. We're asking for property rights claims. And this is why Congress must act. See, we're not talking about waging a war. We're not putting boots on the ground. All we need is an executive order, and I propose would establish an interagency task force to investigate these exact matters. In other words, let the federal government go through its own documents and give us everything it has about the Clotilda, the Nightingale, the Wanderer, etc. Let us know which one of these nations is responsible. Okay, that's it. They have the legal records. Some of y'all can go do it. You don't necessarily have to wait for the federal government. I'm just saying. Evaluate the sovereign immunity barriers, coordinate with the Department of State, preserve and digitize the archives, educate the public, submit a report to the president. The legislation would then create the legal pathway for eligible foundational Black Americans to file lawsuits in the United States of America in the proper districts, like Mobile, Alabama, like Georgia, like Columbia, South Carolina. And the executive order activates the federal government. The legislation creates the weapon, and the ships provide the proof. And that's the work. I've already done it. Matter of fact, let me show you something. I'm excited. I know you all are boring as hell. This is exciting to me. Somebody type honest lawyer in the chat room. I'm excited about it. I like it. And I think finally Black America is finally ready to listen, because before you all had been romantic. We love Africa. Africa like you did for y'all. Right? They like you like that. You guys are learning something. Let me know you are learning something. Okay, so this is my proposed executive order. You see that? I actually sent this to my senator, both of my senators, and I sent it to the president. So I'll read it. If you guys, can I read a little bit of it? It's not too long, but it's very specific. I'll be more than happy to read it. This is the proposed executive order that I sent to President Trump. I actually got a response back from Senator Cornyn at my office. I have to take some time to go over that. Executive order by the President of the United States of America, executive order on the establishment of a task force to pursue the diplomatic and legal remedies for descendants of illegal post-1808 transatlantic slave trade by the authority vested in me, President by the Constitution and laws of the United States of America. It is hereby ordered. Section 1 policy, it is the policy of the United States to acknowledge and address the specific historical injustice suffered by foundational Black Americans whose ancestors were unlawfully trafficked into the United States in violation of the act prohibiting the importation of slaves of 1807, effective on January 1st, 1808. Shout out to Big J. Thank you so much. Despite the prohibition, evidence confirms, where I lost my, that the illegal transatlantic slave trade continued, including infamous voyages such as those of the Clotilda, the Wanderer, often conducted with the active participation of sponsorship of certain African kingdoms. The United States recognizes a unique moral, legal, and historical obligation to investigate these violations violations of U.S. and international law, and to facilitate diplomatic and legislative remedies consistent with the principles of law, justice, and national healing. This initiative is grounded in the Act prohibiting the importation of slaves of 1807, the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act 2016, the Constitutional authority under Article 1, Section 8, and the 13th and 14th Amendments, international norms prohibiting torture, forced labor, and arbitrary detention as codified in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the ICCPR. Section 2, establishment of an interagency task force on post-1808 slave restorative justice. There is hereby established an interagency task force on post-1808 slave trade restorative justice task force, chaired by the Attorney General on their designee, including representatives. Shout out to Madman. The Department of Justice, the Department of State, the Department of Homeland Security, the Office of the United States Trade Representative, the Department of Treasury, the National Archives, the Records Administration, the Department of Education, the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, and other agencies and chair deemed necessary. Section 3, the task force shall identify nations of origin, examine historical and legal records to identify African sovereigns or successor states materially involved in the illegal slave trade after 1808. Recommendation, legal avenues, evaluate the domestic and international legal framework, support civil claims by eligible foundational Black Americans, including statutes, treaties, and common law doctrines. Evaluate sovereign immunity barriers, access to Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, FISA, and recommend statutory exceptions or judicial pathways to overcome immunity in appropriate cases. Diplomatic engagement, collaborate with the Department of State to engage in diplomatic discussions with identified. In other words, we're going to talk to them. You know, we got some Blacks over here. You owe them some money. You better work it out, or we're going to let them sue you. You know, here's another one. Identified African successor states regarding acknowledgement, apology, or restitution. In other words, pay them now or pay them later. A historical legal support, coordinate the preservation and digitization and accessibility of historical archives that may substitute potential claims. Public reporting, submit a comprehensive public report to the president within 180 days of the order, detailing findings, recommendations for legislation, action, and diplomatic strategy. Educational outreach, promote public education regarding the historical facts and legal framework. Section 4, recognition of foundational Black Americans. The federal government formally recognizes foundational Black Americans as a distinct lineage group. Eligibility is defined as individuals who are U.S. citizens by birth, can trace their lineage to African ancestors enslaved within the present-day United States prior to the ratification of the 13th Amendment. That eliminates a bunch of people. Descendant from families who survived American slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and systematic racial discrimination unique to the U.S. experience. This recognition excludes voluntary post-slavery immigrants from Africa, the Caribbean, or elsewhere. You see that line right there? Uncle D, boy, you out of here. You can't, it's not you. So you're not us. Somebody in the chat room type, you're not us. Section 5, the president urges Congress to pass legislation such as the Foundational Black American Slave Trade Restorative Justice Act. I wrote this last year. That's why I say all I need to do is just change the year. That creates a private right of action for foundational Black Americans against African states, successor African states that participated in the illegal post-1808 slave trade. The task force shall insist Congress in drafting legislation create federal jurisdiction for these claims. Shout out to Jitzita, I can't say that name. Create federal jurisdiction for the claims, waive sovereign immunity for relevant human rights violation, establish a 50-year statute of limitation beginning upon the discovery of eligibility. The Department of Justice shall provide technical expertise to support this legislative effort. And in other words, let the Department of Justice tell us how to do it, right? And we'll follow that. Access to legal resources and documentation. The federal agencies include the National Archives, the Library of Congress. The Department of Justice shall preserve, digitize, and make publicly accessible relevant historical documents, provide educational resources, support claims and research, assist initiatives aimed at restoring the historical record for affected communities. 7, nothing in this order shall impair the authority granted by law to any executive department or agency or the functions of the director of the Office of Management and Budget. Implementation of this order shall be consistent with applicable law and subject to availability and appropriations. This order does not create any right or benefit enforceable at law or in equity against the United States, its departments or agencies. So you see that? We're not suing the United States. We're going after Africa, those successor states. And this will be the executive order. This is what the executive order would look like, okay? And it will be signed by our president. All he has to do is sign it, and this president would do that because he's a businessman and he understands exactly where I'm coming from. Now, I know that was boring, but if you would like me to, I would like to show you all the proposed legislation. Now, I won't read it all because I don't want to bore you all to death, and I know this is boring, but I think that there are some smart people in here who will say, man, I need to save this broadcast and this is helpful. And really want is giving you a pathway. Okay. This what American is going to disagree with? White Americans like, yeah, we can make a lot of money on that. All these all these corporations and businesses and oil companies, they're going to look at this and say, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Another source of income. Okay. And it's all legal and it's all done right here in your backyard. If you guys want me to, I will read a little bit of the proposed legislation. And you all know how legislation works, passed by 2 houses of Congress and signed by the president. It's real easy. Now, again, I wrote this last year. All right. So, you know, we're Americans. We can do whatever we want to do in our country, right? So let's look at it. It's entitled the Foundational Black American Slave Trade Restorative Justice Act of 2025. Again, this basically gives those eligible Black Americans permission to sue the other guilty party, i.e. those African successor states. And this act may be cited as the FBA Slave Trade Restorative Justice Act of 2025 or whatever. Congress finds that despite the prohibition of the transatlantic slave trade by the act prohibiting importation of slaves of 1807, effective January 1st, 1808, the illegal importation of enslaved Africans directly from Africa to the United States continued, including notable incidents involving the slave ship, the Clotilda and the Wanderer. These voyages, despite the transient stops elsewhere, resulted in the direct and unlawful transportation of Africans to the United States. That impact of this illegal trade has been profound and enduring for their descendants, known today as foundational Black Americans. This act is designed to enable foundational Black Americans, specifically direct descendants of Africans forcibly transported to the United States after 1808, federal prohibition, including but not limited to the descendants from the Clotilda and the Wanderer incidents, to seek restorative justice through civil actions against modern African nations that are successors to historical entities involved in the post-1808 transatlantic slave trade. Definitions. A foundational Black American, a United States citizen who by birth is historically designated as a freedman, a Negro, colored, or Black, who demonstrates through genealogical evidence, historical documentation, or other verifiable means direct lineage to an African person enslaved and transported directly from Africa to the United States after January 1st, 1808. This definition explicitly excludes individuals of recent Caribbean, African, Central, or South American descent, or those whose ancestral lineage does not originate from chattel slavery within the boundaries of the United States. So in other words, if your ancestors were always free, if your ancestors were Native Americans, you are not eligible. You understand that? I'm just saying. If you say that you are Navajo princess, you're not eligible. That's what I'm saying. You saying that your ancestors were already here, you are not eligible for this. Somebody type FBA in the chat room. But anyway, any current African nation that is a success, and so let me see. Any African sovereign is defined as any current African nation that is a successor to a historical empire kingdom, or that materially benefited from or actively participated in the post-1808 illegal transatlantic slave trade as documented by credible historical government or academic sources. Okay, establishment of cause of action and jurisdiction. Private cause of action. A foundational Black American may bring a civil action for damages. In other words, a lawsuit. Somebody type lawsuit. Somebody type lawsuit. May bring a civil action for damages against an African sovereign in the United States District Court for acts committed in violation of the act prohibiting importation of slaves of 1807 and applicable international human rights standards. Federal jurisdiction. The United States Federal District Court shall have exclusive jurisdiction over any civil action brought under this act. Venue. Actions under this act shall be brought in U.S. federal district courts that meet any of the following criteria. Locations where the majority of the plaintiffs reside, which would be, in the case of Africatown, would be Mobile, Alabama. Defendant's presence, where the defendant maintains a diplomatic, consular, or official presence. Places like New York, where they keep their consulates. Places like Ghana. I think they have a Nigerian consulate here in Houston. This would be an eligible place. You understand what I'm saying? Where there is a significant historical connection to the transatlantic slave trade event. Materials and cause of action. So for instance, when we talk about like the slave ports in New Orleans, right? Which would be the Eastern District of New Orleans. Exceptions to sovereign immunity. Human rights violation. This is already on the books. Human rights violations are a sovereign immunity shall not apply to cases involving allegations of participation in post-1808 transatlantic slave trade recognized as violation of customary international law, universally accepted human rights norms, successor-state liability. Modern African nations are liable for the actions of their historical predecessors. So even if you are the president of Ghana, even if you have a legislator now, that African chief who was rounding up neighbors and other Africans and selling them to Europeans, you all are a successor state. You are responsible. Those predecessor states involved in it, that's you. Somebody type, that's you. Okay? What's the statute of limitations? Extended limitations period. Any claim under this act may be brought within 50 years of the enactment of this act. Discovery rule. The statute of limitations shall begin to run upon the discovery or the date reasonable discovery by the claimant or their qualifying ancestry as a foundational Black American. So that means you don't have to just run out and file within that. When you find out that your people were descended from one of those folk who were brought over here on that those illegal ships, that's when you have 50 years from that date. So your grandchildren might do it. Remedies, somebody type payback. Compensatory damage. Plaintiffs may seek compensatory for economic and non-economic harms, including property loss, emotional distress, loss of cultural identity, okay? Punitive damage. Courts may award punitive damages in cases involving egregious misconduct. So you're literally talking about money or whether you sell your mineral rights, whatever, okay? Restorative justice measure. Courts may order actions contributing to community restoration, including public apologies, the construction of community institutions, and educational initiative. But you know, y'all just want your money. They don't need to build we don't need Wakanda over here. Just get your check. Damages calculations. Courts shall consider factors such as the value of lost labor, emotional trauma, cultural dislocation, and enrichment unjustly obtained by the defendant. In other words, they're over there living on your land. So how much did they benefit by having your land and access to your minerals, et cetera, oil, et cetera, right? Implementation and enforcement. Restorative Justice Claim Fund and Tribunal. The Attorney General of the United States shall establish a Restorative Justice Claim Fund and an administrative tribunal to assist in processing claims under this act and subject to review. Interagency coordination, the Department of Justice, Department of State. So you see what I'm doing? We're putting the U.S. government on them. We gonna put our dog on them. You understand? Instead of you having to go out there and try to petition the court, instead of the U.S. government turning on you, stopping you from getting your little reparations check from Evanston, Chicago, or Illinois, you put the U.S. government on these other people and let them go get your money. You see how this is? And everybody's gonna line up to get it. Oh, hold on a minute. You got one of those blacks down there? The last one, we got a $30 million contract because we had about 10,000 of them. And so we were able to coordinate, and now we got a 100-year lease over there. And all we got to do is give them 20%, which could be hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay? So the U.S. government shall engage with the international. I want y'all to think about that. Okay? This is I know you're bored. I'm sorry. Section 10, if any provision of this act or implementation thereof to any person or circumstances found unconstitutional, the remainder of the act shall not be affected. This is standard language. The act shall take effect immediately upon passage. Okay, so you guys get that? So it's there. It's there. You have to understand, we can do what we want to. This is the United States of America. We are a country of laws. Anybody who wants to do business in this country has to follow our laws. We as Americans, we as Black Americans have to begin to say, hey, you know what? We're going to use America to do what we want to do just like everybody else does. Why not? Somebody type, why not? You see the Israelis do it. Why not us? Right? Now, again, I've drafted the proposed legislation. I drafted the proposed executive order. I prepared the legislative brief, okay? I sent it to the president. I've sent it to my senators, okay? I've done all of this legwork. Now, what I need you all to do, all you people who've been here with me, right? I need y'all to sign this petition. Now, I'm not going to read the whole petition, but it's there for you to sign, and I'm going to put the link in the description section, and I'm also going to put the link in the chat room. It's there for you to sign. Do you want justice? I think at this point I have about 15,000, maybe 15,000 or so signatures. I'm not sure, but this is what it looks like right there. And what I'll do is I'll make sure I put it in the description section also, so that everybody can take the opportunity to sign it when you leave. When you leave here, you make sure you sign it in the description section. And this is a win-win. Now, if you just don't want Black people to have reparations, then whatever. Maybe you don't sign it or not, but this is a win-win situation. This is how you put America first. You understand what I'm saying? But again, like I said, I've drafted the proposal. I took the time. I took the months it took to draft this proposed executive order. I prepared the legislation. I prepared the legal rationale and the memorandum. I've written the president. I request executive leadership. I've identified specific ships, the source, the region. I framed the claim as a lineage-based, evidence-based, property-based. I've created the petition. I even sent it to Brother Tariq Nasheed because he was the inventor of the term FBA, which is crucial because delineation is the most important thing. I didn't do that. You all delineated, and because you delineated, it makes it's far easier to define us as a group. So delineation is crucial to this. Okay, you can't be African American. You have to be your own specific group, and this is the most crucial part. So kudos to Foundation. But again, I created the petition, and I'm asking people to sign the petition. That's going straight to Congress, and I made it clear that this isn't symbolic reparations. This is a demand for legal recognition, federal action, and strategic leverage. And this message to Congress is straightforward. Pass the foundational Black American Slave Trade Restorative Justice Act, create a private right of action, create federal jurisdiction, waive sovereign immunity, recognize successor-state liability, preserve the digitized records, establish the claim, and fund the tribunal. Support diplomatic engagement, give eligible foundational Black Americans the legal pathway to pursue the African successor states whose predecessors and regimes participated in the illegal post-1808 trafficking. This is not begging that we're doing. This is not fantasy. This isn't anti-African hatred either. Now, I know it's a lot of Africans who will get on their little web pages and Twitter fingers and be mad, but whatever. You shouldn't have done it, okay? We got the ship's names. We traced the voyages. The law is already in place already. We just asked them to put it in our law. The injuries are still alive. The land is still there. The minerals are still there. The successor states still benefit, and the descendants of people who were illegally removed still have no restored inheritance. And this is why this proposal matters. And again, you guys remember that the Clotilda, the Wanderer, the Echo, the Nightingale, those names aren't just history. That's evidence. Okay? They are the legal anchors. They are the beginning of the new reparations strategy that moves us away from begging America through moral sympathy and towards building leverage through law, lineage, land, successor-state, and successor-state accountability. You see, and these proposals work because it does what most reparation plans fail to do. It identifies a real source of outside wealth. It creates real legal leverage. It gives powerful institutions like oil companies, mineral companies, law firms. It gives them a reason to get involved instead of asking the American taxpayer to fund reparations. Okay, this proposal targets African successor states whose predecessor kingdoms participated in the illegal post-1808 slave trafficking after the United States had already outlawed trade. You see that? So this is an America First policy, whether you think about this is bringing money to the United States. It's not recirculating money we already have here. These white folk are poor. They don't have $1 trillion to give you, but it's $1 trillion worth of oil and minerals over there in that ground in Africa, and those Africans aren't going to give it to you. Are they going to give it to you? They want to charge you when you come to the airport. You understand? There's a bunch of white people. But you know what? I think my great granddad was black. Maybe I know some white people is going to try to get some money too. But what I'm trying to say is it makes no sense to try to take money from the United States when eventually it's still going to come out of our tax dollars anyway. Let's find a new source of money and resource and income. Why not that? Why don't we do that? Isn't that the intelligent thing to do? If you all think that's an intelligent thing to do, let me know. Why would you say, yeah, I just took $50 from my brother's wallet? Y'all live in the same house. That's still in the same house. Why not say, yeah, I went across the street and I cut somebody's grass or whatever. I got $100 from next door. Isn't that more intelligent? You bringing more money to the house instead of recirculating money that's there. Just think about that. Think about that. Somebody type America first. See, I'm a Black American. I'm a patriot. I love my country. I want my country to succeed. Even though my country don't love me, I don't care, because that's the most American thing you can do. We don't care. I don't care if you like me or not. That's pretty American. I'm still going to be me. We fight, and we don't care if you like us or not. We're not over here to be liked. Matter of fact, the rest of the world can hate me, but I don't care. Especially, just keep that in mind. That's a very American way to see things. I don't care what you think. That's why racism is, I know it's going to be there. It's like weather. It's never going anywhere. I don't care. Just leave me alone. Stay out of my face. Leave me alone. That's an American attitude. I don't have to be liked. You see, and I wish more people would get to that point. You can be as racist and bigoted as you want to. You can have all your strong held beliefs. I don't care as long as you don't have any control over me. You see what I'm saying? You see how that works? I don't care. It requires you to toughen up. It requires you to recognize that life isn't a popularity contest. Are you happy? Are you happy where you are? Are you content? I don't want to get off subject, but again, what I'm saying is this fight moves things in the federal court. Okay, you don't have to worry about a Congress. You don't have to worry about the American voters. All you have to do is deal with this judge, and that's the key. Congress doesn't have to write a check. Okay, it only has to create the private right of action in a federal jurisdiction and sovereign immunity, and we go fight it out. Maybe you win the case, maybe you don't. I don't know, but everybody gets due process. And see, after the eligible FBA Americans file suit and prove lineage and prove the illegal voyage and prove successor-state a connection and obtain a federal judgment. Oh man, once that judgment is entered, the issue is no longer whether voters approve of reparations. The issue becomes how the judgment gets satisfied. In other words, how we collect the wealth and the money. And that's where the leverage comes in. A federal judgment can be enforced against attached assets and commercial property and bank accounts and state-owned companies and mineral revenues and contracts and receivables and other commercial interests connected to those defendant states. And if the federal government and major law firms and banks and energy companies and mining companies and construction companies are aligned with the claim, the enforcement becomes even stronger. Now the defendant state, Nigeria, Togo, Benin, Congo, Sierra Leone, whoever, it isn't just facing the moral demand, it's facing litigation pressure, diplomatic pressure, commercial pressure, banking pressure, and resource pressure from the most powerful nation on the planet and some of the biggest corporations on the planet. And this creates a strong incentive for major American industries to support the effort. Mining companies want access to cobalt, lithium, diamonds, gold, copper, manganese, and other African minerals, don't they? Don't they want that? Don't you think they would love to have a legitimate claim to that? All they have to do is buy it from us through our lawsuit. Energy companies want oil, gas, ports, pipelines, and power projects. Construction companies want infrastructure, contracts. Banks want financing opportunities. Major law firms, they want historic litigation with massive recovery potential. $2 billion, $3 billion, $4 billion, $8 billion. The federal government wants more influence in Africa and a lawful way to compete with China and Russia, don't they? And my proposal gives all of them a toehold in Africa through a justice framework that benefits foundational Black Americans. Think about that. And that's why this isn't begging. It's strategy. A judgment or a settlement doesn't have to be paid only in cash. It can be satisfied through land access, long-term leases, citizenship pathways, mineral royalties. You can negotiate whatever you want when you holding a judgment over somebody's head for property rights laws. And see, if you got a country that says we cannot or will not pay, we too poor, it can settle through resources. Okay, that's fine. Give us a 150-year lease on this cobalt mine that you have over here. And then you sell that to a major American company. And what do you care? You can come up with a revenue sharing plan or whatever. That's how you turn historical injury into future power. And this also bypasses the usual political obstruction. Once the law is enacted, we don't need another vote from Congress. We don't need the president to approve. We don't need the next president. We don't care. We don't need taxpayers. These people on YouTube saying, you guys don't deserve it. It won't matter. We don't need hostile voters to agree. You can be mad all you want. Somebody type mad, big mad. It don't matter. You're no longer relevant. You weren't here in the first place. Why do we care what you think? In other words, somebody type, we don't care. We don't need people who hate black reparations no matter what. Even if they're not paying a dime, doesn't come out, they just hate it anyway. We don't need your permission. You don't matter anymore. You're irrelevant as the gnat on a cow's behind that you fly by doing 100 miles an hour on the side of the road. You're irrelevant. Nobody cares what you think. The courts apply the statute. The plaintiffs prove the claims. The judgment gets entered. The enforcement begins. That's the shortcut. You move reparations out of the hands of people who keep telling you no and have been telling you no for 75, 100 years just because they don't want black people to have anything. And you put it into the hands of the federal courts and with applying federal law, and you narrow the class. You identify the ships. You identify the successor states. You prove the harm. You obtain judgment and enforce it against wealth that actually exists. That's not power. That's not symbolism. That's not speeches. It's not another commission that goes nowhere. This is proposal creates legal weapon and economic incentive and geographical reason for powerful entities to line up behind foundational Black American reparations. So I just totally flipped the script. You understand what I'm saying? This one piece of legislation just totally flipped the script. Now where you had everybody against us, now you have the most powerful, the richest amongst us saying, hey, there's an incentive for us to help out. You got leverage. It gives them the opportunity. It forces African successor states to answer for their illegal trafficking. That was already a crime when it happened. You see how that works? You see that? Shout out to Southern University's Law Center and the Tulane University Law Center. But anyway, we got 9 super chats. I'm glad some of y'all learned something. I appreciate that. If you learned something, I appreciate you guys for subscribing to the channel. If I made you mad, that's fine, because that just means it's not rational for anybody to be angry with my reparations plan, because it doesn't cost you anything. It's just one of the hundreds of pieces of legislation that go through Congress every year. Won't cost you. It doesn't bother. It doesn't hurt any Americans. All it does is bring revenue to the United States of America. Now, I can understand why Africans would be mad, because they don't want us to have anything. And so I want you all to make sure you understand that that's fine. But remember what you said, we're not the same people. So why should I care what you think? We're not brothers. We're not sisters. Remember that. We're not African. We're of African descent, but we're not African. I want you to keep that in mind. I don't owe you anything. Let me remind you Africans again. You know how you all said that y'all sold us into slavery and we weren't the same people? We're not the same people now. So why should I care if I take your land and take your minerals? You wasn't doing anything with it anyway. Why would I care? I'm just saying. And that's the cold-hearted approach that most FBAs are taking now. You understand? So let's go ahead and read the super chats. We have 9 super chats. Thank you guys so much. Again, you guys don't owe me anything. All I say is if you learn something, I should earn something. And I appreciate the 9 people who did earn something. That makes you guys awesome. You're the real MVPs. Big J said, ain't it crazy how scamming is part of their culture, even on the government level? Yeah, you know, it's what it is, man. You can't get away from it. Shout out to my man, Big J. Ain't it crazy how all these non-FBAs have an opinion about us and what we deserve? Reparations is not a handout or a government assistance. It's a debt owed. Why don't people understand? And here's the thing. Isn't it nice to simply say, oh, okay, so you don't want us to get reparations from the U.S. government? Well, we're going to get it from you. Ain't that something? Ooh, shout out to me, boy. Shout out to Uncle D with the legal jujitsu. Oh, so you don't, I'm okay, we're going to get it from you then. I love that. That's payback, boy. That is poetic justice. Shout out to Mr. J, 4419. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Also, FBA salute y'all. Gonna pay Mama Africa, huh? Yeah, we're gonna make them pay. Who else? Big J came back. Like I told you on the previous broadcast, I think this is brilliant. How you're using what the law at the time to go about this law. I think it's always been there. All you got to do, family, look, the best place to hide something from Black folks is to put it in a book. You know what I'm saying? But just put it in a book, especially a law book, because y'all clearly don't read no law books. Y'all ain't read one of them. I don't want to bring that up, but I'm just saying. Okay, I'm just saying. Okay, but I hope y'all understand where I'm coming from, man. Anyway, let's see. We got 10 people there. All right, we doing great. Madman learning something. Good looking out, family. Also, respect FBA salute. Thank you so much, Madman. Who else we got? Jadizzle, got to give props for all the work put in this document. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Madman, other guilty party, pay up. Yeah, somebody type the other guilty party in the chat room. And Big J, people are saying the link for the petition isn't working. Is it not working? Let me see, man. That's terrible. We got to get this link working. Somebody said the link is not working. I'm going to double check and see if the link is working. I'll see right now. Let's see if the link is working. Looks like it's working to me, brother. This is what it looks like when you pop it up. Let's take a look. Y'all see that? That's what it looks like. Okay. And this is the link right here. And I will definitely put this in the description section so you all can, all my mods, please copy that link and put it everywhere you can find it. That's the link though. Okay. That's the link. Just copy it and sign it. Every American who wants to bring new money and resources to the United States should follow this link and sign it. I don't see this is great for America. If you know anybody in the Trump administration, tell them to hit me up. Tell them they can hit me up on my cell phone. Okay, give me a call. Hit me up right now. I got you. Okay, we can talk about it. I'm ready for it. I'm ready to have a conversation. I love to fly up to the White House. I wasn't able to make it for the MMA fight on the lawn, but I'm here. I'm here for your prayers. 47. Somebody type 47. We can do this. If Donald Trump signs this, and this, he will go down in history as one of the greatest presidents of all time as far as Black Americans are concerned. You see what I'm saying? He'd be one of the greatest Americans of all time. Because he would have been the one that gave Black people reparations. You see, or at least access to reparations. So this link is working, okay? And all you got to do is read it. Well, I'll read it. I urge you to sign the executive order establishing the Interagency Task Force post-1808 slave trade, January 1st. You guys can read it yourself. I don't want to belittle this, but it's Mr. President, all right? And let's see how many people we have so far. Let me see. I can't even, trying to see how many folk we have signed this thing. I think it was like 15,000 last time I checked. But I hadn't checked it in a while. But I need you guys to take the time to sign it. I appreciate it. But this is it. Easy to fill out. Appreciate you guys. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and we've done our part here. You guys got it. But what I want to do at this point is kind of wrap things up. Thank you for everybody who came through with the super chats, the cash apps, and the PayPals. And well, I don't think we got any cash apps, but I appreciate everybody who subscribed to the channel. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you do nothing else. Okay. You don't have to pay me anything. I'm not asking you for any money. I do appreciate the super chats because they let me know you guys, it's hard to earn money. And I know that says a lot when you take the time to contribute. So thank you all for that. But I really, really, really need you guys to help me get to 200,000 subscribers. So if you will, please subscribe to the channel, something that, nobody probably ever thought I would be able to do, because I'm just a boring middle-aged lawyer in Texas in a blue blazer. Okay. Just being boring as hell. These are not interesting subjects. If I'm not talking about Meg the Stallion, they don't think anybody wants to watch. But I appreciate you guys hanging in. So let me close with this, because I know some of you all are against this just on general principle. Okay, I know you are. You believe America and Europe must pay. That's just where you are. That's your Pan-African, pro-black, blackity-black stance. You believe corporations must pay. White corporations got to pay. They got to pay. And I'm not saying they don't owe us something. I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying. Okay? And the activists and the protesters have been working on that for hundreds of years now, haven't they? Right? And guess what? You all are free to continue doing that. But see, as a lawyer, that's not my plan of action. My goal is to get foundational Black Americans paid right now. Somebody type right now in the chat room. That's what good lawyers, that's what they do. A good lawyer, a good personal injury lawyer, doesn't become emotional or attached to one tortfeasor and then ignore the other guilty party who has assets, exposure, and liability. If multiple parties participated in the wrong, then you pursue the party you can reach, the party you can prove, the party that creates leverage. It doesn't matter which guilty party pays first. What matters is they pay. Somebody type pay up in the chat room. And for generations, I've been watching, Black Americans have been trained to look only toward the United States and Europe and white banks and white insurance companies and white corporations. And yes, all of them, they have blood on their hands. But we refuse to look honestly at Africa for their illegal actions because it made us uncomfortable. We romanticized Africa. We treated African states as poor victims with no agency and no choices, no ruling class, no armies, no markets, no ports, no kings, no chiefs, no merchants, and no responsibility. But the historical record isn't that childish. The truth is that certain African kingdoms and ruling classes participated in the capture, sale, and export of our ancestors. And when they're confronted with that, many will not say they sold their brothers and sisters, will they? They will say they sold their enemies. They will say they sold captives. They will say they sold rival strangers and outsiders and people they defeated, won't they? That's what they say, right? That's fine. And if that was the position then we need to stop pretending they're in some automatic sentimental bond now with us. We don't have that. That's why this proposal is necessary. We aren't begging Africa. We aren't asking them for emotional acceptance. We tried that. It didn't work. We aren't asking for symbolic apology while the land, minerals, and ports, and oil, and gas, and gold, diamonds, and cobalt, and future wealth remain untouched. We are asserting a legal claim for our ancestors who were treated as enemies when they were captured and sold at the shores to those European merchants and American merchants. You see? Us, their descendants, have every right to act like a serious legal adversary right now. Not through violence, not through chaos, not through empty threats, through U.S. law, through U.S.-based litigation, through United States federal courts in our backyard built on the land we were enslaved on. That's poetic justice. And when we get through, when we get those judgments, when we get that diplomatic pressure, when we get those treaties, when we get there, when we get through, get the asset enforcement and the mineral royalties and the land access and the citizenship rights, if that's what you want. Every lawful mechanism available to a people finally ready to stop begging. That's what we want. That's what I want for you. And I might not be here, but the legal framework is available, and you're entitled to the land you would have otherwise had before they captured you, sold you to white people, and sent you here to the United States. We want our land back, just like the Native Americans. We want our land back, and we want everything that's below it and above it. We want our land back. We want more than money. We want our land back. And let's talk about the Black immigrants who come to this country and benefit from the foundation we built. Many of you all come here, you go to our American schools, you enter our medical schools, our law schools, our engineering programs, our corporate America, government, academia, hospitals, and universities, and professional class. You benefit from the civil rights laws and our people that our people bled for. You benefit from our historically Black colleges that our people built. You benefit from our anti-discrimination laws that our people fought for. They benefit from the cultural capital, the political openings, and the institutional access created by foundational Black Americans. Then, too many of them turn around and tell us we're wrong for demanding reparations, wrong for delineating away from them, wrong for defending our claims, and wrong for refusing to let them jump the line into a debt that belongs to our ancestors. That's not solidarity, that's extraction. And I'm not going to apologize for saying it. If people come here and reap the benefit of our struggle while sending money, education, and influence and status and political power back to the same continents and countries whose predecessors' systems helped sell our ancestors into bondage, then foundational Black Americans have every right to ask, why should we be loyal to that arrangement? Why should we be loyal to you? Why should we as foundational Black Americans keep sacrificing sacrificing for people who oppose our claim, irrespective of the fact that they share the same color? They dilute our identity and benefit from our labor while telling us to be quiet. If they did what they did for profit, then we need to move for profit. If they use power, then we need to use power. If they use law, trade, land, markets, then we need to use law, trade, land, and markets. This is America. We can do what we want to do. We're Americans. There's no other group of Americans more American than foundational Black Americans. We were here at the foundation. Before most of these Europeans came here on those boats in 1905 and 1915 from Poland and Ireland and Italy, we were already here. This is our country. And don't you let any of these people tell you otherwise. We fought and died. We got blood in the soil. Our ancestors fought and died on the front lines of every war before any of those Europeans came here. And that includes the African, everybody. Keep that in mind. The bottom line is this is about putting the right people on the defense. Because see, for too long, Black Americans have been the ones explaining ourselves and defending ourselves and begging for inclusion and trying to prove we deserve repair. no more. The burden needs to shift. Let the successor states, let those Africans explain why they inherited the land but not the liability. Let them explain why they benefit from the territory but not the debt. Let them explain why they control the minerals but owe nothing to the descendants of the people who were removed from that very land. Let them explain why they want access to America, our American schools, our American capital, our American courts, our American markets, our American protection, and our American opportunity. But foundational Black Americans should have no claim to the land, citizenship, mineral wealth, or restitution tied to our forced removal. And yes, we're going to use the same American legal system that our ancestors were dragged into. We're going to use the same federal courts. We're going to use the Congress. We're going to use the executive power. We're going to use the U.S. Department of Justice, the Department of State, the Treasury Department, the National Archives, and every other lawful institution available to us as Americans. We're going to use it the same way the government structure that once failed to protect our ancestors to now pursue accountability from what was done to them. And that's not hypocrisy. That's strategy. That's what powerful people do. They use the tools available to them. And let me be clear. Foundational Black Americans are not outsiders to American power. We built this country. We fought in all its wars. We bled. We made other people bleed from this country. We police the streets. We teach its children. We build its cities. We drive its culture. We fill its armed forces, overrepresented in the military. So when people ask why America should be involved, the answer is simple: because this is our country. Let me say that again. The United States of America is foundational Black American country. And we're going to use our country's legal and diplomatic power to pursue our people's claims. That doesn't mean reckless military threats. We don't need that. We got the courtroom. Pen is mightier than the sword. It means lawful national power. It means litigation backed by federal statute. It means judgment backed by enforcement. It means treaties, trade, pressure, and sanctions, tools where lawful asset discovery, bank accounting, tracing, commercial property, attachment, mineral revenue, settlements, and diplomatic negotiations are in full effect. It means if a judgment is entered, the defendant doesn't get to laugh it off because the plaintiffs are Black. If they have assets in reachable jurisdictions, we pursue them. If they have commercial interests connected to American markets, we identify them. If they have state-owned companies doing business with American corporations, we apply pressure. Might type pressure in the chat room. And if they want access to capital, trade, aid, contracts, or diplomatic protection from these United States, then restitution becomes part of the conversation. You don't get to do business with the United States of America when you owe American citizens millions of dollars. That's leverage. And that's why this proposal is different. We're not asking. Once the law is enacted and the courts enter judgments, we don't need a speech. We don't need another apology. We don't need the American voters to approve it. We don't need Congress to vote on every payment. We don't need the president to personally sign off on any other recovery. The law will already exist, and the court will already have jurisdiction, and the eligible clients or claimants will already be defined, and the defendants will already be identified. The judgment will already be entered, and at that point, the question becomes enforcement, settlement, and satisfaction. I don't care whether it's satisfied in cash, land, mineral rights, long-term leases that we can sell, mineral royalties that we can collect, equity, resource concessions, development zone. I don't care about any of that. You can pay it in oil, cobalt, gold, diamonds, land, port access that could be rented out, mineral royalties. Pay it in whatever lawful form gets value back to the descendants of the people who were sold by Africans and displaced and cut off from our inheritance. So to those who say don't sue Africa, my answer is simple. Then tell Africa to pay up voluntarily. We don't need to sue them. Just tell them to pay us. Tell them to acknowledge that debt, that $1 trillion debt. Tell them to open the land. Tell them to provide mineral rights leases to our people. Tell them to share the mineral royalties they have now. Tell them to create restitution trusts for what they owe us. Tell them to stop letting foundational Black Americans be treated like strangers when we come visit the continent. That our ancestors were kidnapped and sold to white people and removed from. But if you will not do it voluntarily, then we're going to litigate right here in our backyard, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, the same places our people were enslaved on. That's not hatred. It's not emotion. It's not fantasy. It's closing of an open ledger. But Africa's successor state don't get a free pass because they're Black. And that makes people uncomfortable. The goal isn't to make everybody feel good, though. The goal is to recover what was stolen and secure leverage for our descendants and force every responsible party to answer. FBA have spent too long begging at doors we helped build, and that era is over. We're not asking permission anymore. We're identifying the ships. We got the proposal. You all need to contact your legislators. Stop asking them for reparations and tell them to enact this statute. Not because they love us, not because they feel guilty, not because they suddenly discovered justice, but because the law, the judgment, and the assets and the leverage leave them no choice. This is Uncle D. I love you all. God bless you. And as I always say at this time, sue them. I'm out.
In the Spurling podcast, hit the like button, subscribe.